Morning, all. Morning, folks. Right. Apologies to the folks on Facebook again. I was trying to see if I could get that matter sorted out. Still having challenges with it, unfortunately. So, yeah. So the folks on just now, I should probably. I was trying to reach one of the admins to have them send out a message to the folks on Facebook. So just give me 1 sec. Let me just send this message out. Yeah. Flow and the nonsense again. So just give me 1 sec here. Right. Still. Right. So happy Republic Day to all. Good morning to, let me see who we have here. Daniela Williams, morning. Althea Allen, morning to you. Pauline Buckmeyer, Wayne Gibson, morning. Rena Jennings, good morning. Shea Dimples, 66, good morning to you. Top Turpin. There's Roxanne, morning, Roxanne. Roxanne, I ain't seen the brooms there, but that's all right. We sweeping from now until 2025. Judy Collins, morning. Deborah Duranti, good morning. John Edwards, Simdom 17, Kathy Ann Best, good morning. Jenny Lee, good morning. Lynette Harris, good morning to you. Hopefully the Facebook issue should be sorted out by Wednesday, because the flow technician is gonna have to Phyllis Antwine. Yes, Phyllis is saying she's been searching all over. She's found me. Nice. Denise, morning. Right. Yeah, so again, happy Republic Day to all of Trinidad and Tobago. David Clark, good morning to those of you who are celebrating in whatever way that you are. Morning to you. Yes, on this long weekend and this sunny Sunday that you could have been by the beach or by the river. But thank you so much for tuning in. Right. So I mentioned on Thursday, was it, that we would be touching a bit on Mr. Griffith this morning. But before I get to him, right, as predicted, and I did mention on Thursday that the UNC would not want to. Well, we didn't really expect Roxanne, is that batted ball? All right. Well, what is that? Yeah, looking like that. Oh yeah, today's the finals of the CPL. Is it? Yes. Trinbago Knight Riders versus the Ghana Amazon Warriors. What a thing! What a thing! What a final that promises to be. Chicken curry versus curry chicken. Well, all right. We will see how that goes. So as I had predicted, we didn't expect much from the opposition United National Congress with respect to the announcement of the signing of the Dragon Gas deal. And they wasted no time out of the blocks. Newsday, well, this is 3 days ago. Right? UNC questions the new signing of the Dragon Gas deal. Big surprise there. Shadow Energy Minister David Lee said the newly signed Dragon Gas deal was a good thing for the country. All right. Any gas that Trinidad and Tobago gets from wherever, once it is legally gotten, is a good thing for the country. What does that mean if it's legally gotten? Really? Lee said, right. But he raised questions on the deal, wondering firstly what was the difference between what was signed by TT Energy Minister Stuart Young and Venezuelan Minister of Popular Power and President of Petróleo de Venezuela, PDVSA, Pedro Tillechia on Wednesday, and what was signed between Trinidad and Tobago Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley and Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro in 2018. What is the difference between what was signed back then and what was signed yesterday? When will we be seeing first gas from whatever they signed? In 2018, Rowley and Maduro signed the deal following a 2016 meeting, which set the joint production venture in motion. Energy giant Shell was part of the deal offering to lay down the infrastructure using its pipeline, including those in the North Coast marine acreage to transport dragon gas to Hibiscus platform. Right, so they give you the whole chronology there. Right in there. Right. Lee goes on to say, under this government, TNT has not been producing the gas that is required to maintain our daily requirements for Point Lisa's industrial estate and for export. We have been failing, or rather falling short, way below what this government has told us we will be getting. This government has not incentivized oil and gas companies to produce gas from TNT fields. Okay, David, thanks for that. Now, see, the interesting thing about Mr. Lee and that nonsense, and the criticism there, he talks here about this government has not incentivized oil and gas company to produce gas from TNT fields. What incentive did the government? Well, the People's Partnership government, what incentive did they offer? Right? We know. Come and drill, find oil, find gas, and whatever money you all spend to find the oil and find the gas, write it off against whatever money you should pay us in taxes and royalties for finding our oil and gas and selling it and making money. So if you spend $100 million to drill a well, and you're supposed to pay us $100 million in taxes and royalties, write it off. So you're paying us nothing. And you could do that until 2024. We are still in 2023. The second term of this administration is almost over. So for most of this, if that was allowed to stand, well, I mean, it stand in a sense because this administration had to put in a new royalty arrangement of some 12.5% in order to be able to get revenues from these entities, right? But nevertheless, if they were in office, had they won in 2015 and again in 2020, would we have seen a continuation of these incentives and an increase in these incentives? So basically, you encouraging people or providing them with incentives to come into your country, find oil and gas, sell the oil and gas, spend it, keep the money, give you nothing, but you could boast, well, we are GDP high and we have direct foreign investment in the country. Well, we don't really need the taxes and royalties. You all come here and drill and hire people and create jobs. We will settle for that until 2024, and after that, we'll renegotiate the contracts, and then we could start receiving some oil and gas. Of course, by then, in 2024, they could come and tell us, okay, what now? You only have to dry well, we bouncing up on it and really happy because there is money to be had once you find oil and gas. How much incentive do you need to really come on and drill? But David Lee here talking about lack of incentives. So he had, other than to say it's a good thing for the country, he had nothing further of a positive nature to say on that. Are we surprised? Not surprised in the least. Somebody drew my attention to Mariano Brown, because I did mention on Thursday I wanted to hear what he had to say. Didn't get a chance though, because of course his program is on Friday. Starts at 10, and I teach a class on Friday as well. Starts at the same time his program starts. So I haven't had opportunity yet to listen, but from what I understand, he was less than flattered, less than impressed with his latest development. So I will listen, and then based on what he says, I will then take it from there. Yes, let me see. Hillbench, good morning. Rukmin Gangadine, good morning to you. Neil Francois, morning, sir. I don't know if His Excellency, the President of Pleasantville, is here, but good morning to Nigel O'Connor and First Lady Marissa Kagan. Altius says the PNM collects so much money from the oil companies. These people, yeah. So I'm not surprised, right? So of course I visited the Facebook pages of Kamala Prasad-Bissessar. Nothing on her Facebook page with respect to this development. No kudos to the government. No, nothing of this sort. Absolutely nothing. In fact, she didn't even post this Newsday article with David Lee, right? Ulal Munilal page, all the rest of them. That is not something went on the Facebook page of the Doglaya Politics, Anil Roberts, because he always had to do a live about everything and anything. No live on that. You have nothing to say, no doubles and coffee and no Dogla politics about that. To say, well, yes, finally, even if you want to bad talk the government to say, well, yeah, early and then finally do something good. Not even that. You would swear that didn't happen. If you really follow the Facebook pages of these guys, you would swear that did not happen. That is a figment of PNM imagination, that signing of that gas deal. Further to that, I would have seen where, let me see if I have it here. There was another signing that also took place with respect to the Manatee Field. So let me see if I have this saved here. Yes. Let me see. NGC and Shell signed amended gas sales contract to include Manatee Gas. And this was September 22nd. The National Gas Company and Shell Trinidad and Tobago Limited have signed an amended domestic gas sales contract to incorporate a share of the natural gas volumes from the Shell-operated Manatee Field once the project is sanctioned. The signing took place on September 22nd at the Hilton Trinidad and was attended by the Honorable Stuart Young, Minister of Energy, and so on. In 2019, the government of Trinidad and Tobago and the government of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela executed an agreement allowing each country to independently develop its share of the hydrocarbon resources from the Laurel Manatee gas field, which straddles the maritime border between TNT and Venezuela. Shell and NGC are both working assiduously to monetize this reserve, and Shell as the operator responsible for development and production, and NGC as the entity that will facilitate receipt and processing of gas via its Beachfield facility. So that's some more good news there with respect to the energy sector. Natural gas, yeah. Now, of course, we understand why we wouldn't get any commentary from the UNC on this, right? Because both of these developments means more money in the government's coffers, and we know that when the PNM administration gets more money, it ultimately will redound to the benefit of the citizenry of Trinidad and Tobago, right? So, and that is not good news, especially with this coming 2 years before a general election. As we said, going forward, over the course of the next 2 years, you're going to have a lot of things taking place, which will basically bolster the PNM's political stocks. Unfortunately for the UNC, they have nothing to offer. Nothing to offer, right? So all they can do is keep their fingers crossed and hope the crime surge, the crime situation continues, that we have more killings, the like of which we saw in the heights of Guanapo, so that they could come and talk about Hines must go and the government incompetent and really keep pushing Hines in the face of the citizens and all of that. That's all they could depend on. Negative news, bad news. The only way they could win an election is for the government to fail. And when the government fails, the country fails. So they need to ride in like a knight in shining armor to save the country from this wicked and evil PNM that mismanaging the economy. They're talking about foreign exchange. But if the economy, as they tell us, is bad, and the economy is dead, and is on the brink of collapse, where all this is going, I will understand Mr. Brown had a lot to say about that too, but as I said, let me listen to what he said in its entirety, and then I would give a commentary on that. Right? But I'm not surprised. Expected that. So, but we will see in the coming days. So I see they have no Monday. Well, they had no Sunday morning press conference. They will say it's because of the holiday, and they have no Monday night forum. And they had to announce that you all haven't had Monday night forum since the election. Afraid to come and face your supporters. What you're going to come and say now? You have nothing else to talk about. They're going to come back and repeat, load up the Matic. We hear that already. They're going to come and talk about Hines Moscow. We hear that already. What else will you have? Nothing. So after 3 years of Monday night forum meetings, it came to naught. Or you probably realize that. Or is it that the landlord tell all no Monday night forum meeting in the place because all you're owing rent? So it's only a matter of time before we hear them moving headquarters again. In the interim, all councillors and members of parliament are required to pay a 10% rent tax. So while they're talking about Rowley and Imbert want to be taxing, I understand Mrs. Pasabi Sessa and the leadership of the party taxing the councillors and the members of parliament. They have to give a percentage of their salary to go towards paying the rent and other expenses associated with the headquarters. But they only want to know about Balize House. They're so focused on Balize House. Focus on all your headquarters that you all may not have for too much longer. Don't study Balize House. Right? That's not all your business. You want to study Balize House? You can become a member of the PNM, but we're not taking any applications from any of you. Stay right there, please. All, especially the Doglaya. Well, anyway, he ain't coming back no way. Right. So let me get now to. I saw there was a development in Jamaica where the Speaker of the House would have resigned because of some Integrity Commission investigation into her declaration where she would have left out some vehicle or something or whatever it is. Well, nevertheless, she resigned, and the head of the Integrity Commission over there would have proffered charges against the speaker. And I understand that the head of the Integrity Commission, as a result of that decision, he was ambushed in some parking lot somewhere and shot. So why do you want to tell us about crime in Trinidad? Look at where it has reached in Jamaica, where the head of the Integrity Commission got shot for proffering charges against the Speaker of the House. At least we could say we don't have that taking place here, right? Okay. So let me get to Mr. Griffith. Pull this up here. Let me get him right here. Where is he? Right. So I see Mr. Griffith continues to make the rounds. This man is something else to know. But anyway, so he took the state to court. Two matters recently. One being the allegation that his wife's cell phone, him and his wife, that their cell phone was tapped by the SSA on the advice or the request of the former Commissioner of Police, McDonald Jacob, which implies that perhaps there may have been some concern on the part of the authorities with respect to Mr. Griffith's operations, and perhaps even with respect to the issuance of the firearm users licenses. Now, we all recall that the TTPS is one of several entities that is investigating the issuance of firearm users licenses while Mr. Griffith was the Commissioner of Police. The first would have been established by the National Security Council, where Mr. Pritchard, and I can't remember the other guy's name, would have been, their services were retained to conduct an inquiry into the issuance of firearm users licenses, which resulted in a report that was given to Dr. Rowley and as head of the National Security Council, which, as Dr. Rowley characterized, made for some very disturbing reading. The contents of that, right? So this was the first inquiry. We know that Mr. Griffith took issue with that inquiry because he claims the government hired civilians to investigate police, which is something that's not supposed to be done, cannot be done, is wrong. And they paid them a whole set of money. And when the political directorate is hiring civilians, you could tell the civilians what to put in the report because you're paying them. So whatever narrative you expect them to put in the report, they could put. And that makes complete sense to Mr. Griffith, because as if there is no way to disprove what is in the report. If they write a report of lies, the purpose of that report, something has to come out of it, right? Which is possibly charges. But the police would still have to investigate. Only the police could conduct an investigation with a view to arresting, charging and arresting. So the first report that was done on behalf of the National Security Council, notwithstanding the findings, all Dr. Rowley could do is lay the report in the Parliament. And we know Mr. Griffith has filed an injunction preventing that from happening. And his claim for doing so is that the report is filled with lies, and he's challenging Dr. Rowley to come out in the open, come out on the pavement and publish the findings in the report. So do like Kamala Prasad Bisesa when she would have published the findings of the live sport report. Two of the persons who were the subject of that report then claimed that they were not given the opportunity to respond, that it was a miscarriage of justice. They took the matter to court, and the court said, yes, we agree with you. You all should have been given an opportunity to respond to the findings. The report is squashed, not because of any other findings on the report. Miscarriage of justice, due process was not followed. A report was written, and the persons who were so named in that report and accused of certain things were not given an opportunity to respond to those findings, right? Good. So Mr. Griffith is trying to goad Dr. Rowley to come out in the public, do the same thing, so that that report too could be quashed. So you go into the court say you can't publish it nowhere, outside or inside the Parliament, nowhere. People continue to ask, why is Mr. Griffith so insistent on this report not coming public? What is in it that he's so afraid of? What doesn't he want the population to know? Why doesn't he want the population to be to also have an opportunity to partake of this disturbing reading, right? Face your accuser. Have you seen the report, Mr. Griffith? We ask him. We know the Stanley John report, which I will come to just now. The contents of that was published in a newspaper. But this other report, the first one, commissioned by the National Security Council, nobody don't know what's in it except the Prime Minister and the National Security Council. So how you know? How you know what's in that report that you want to file an injunction so it wouldn't be published? Just like with the merit list. The merit list that he insists that his name was at the top of the list and who not. How you know that? The list left the Police Service Commission in the hands of the chairman. The chairman went to the president, gave it to the president, and then took it back. All in the same day, right? So the only eyes that would have seen that merit list would have been the Police Service Commission. And I don't know if it is the president is required to open the envelope and see, or if it is the president who's just supposed to transmit the list to the parliament for them to deal with it. So I'm trying to figure out how it is Mr. Griffith get to see that list. How he knows that his name was at the top of the list. And everybody else who's singing that same song about they intercepted the merit list because Gary Griffith's name was first and they didn't want Gary to be. How will you know that? All you see the list? The president told you all that? Did Blissy Prasad say that? Who said that? Gary said that. The UNC said that. But the people who would have had sight of the list ain't say that. But that's what we're running with, right? Okay. So again, I ask, you file an injunction for a report that you ain't see. You're not supposed to know what's in that report because it was between Pritchard, the other guy, and the National Security Council. So how you know what's in that? Unless you know because you know. And how you could know? Because you know what you do. And it's only if you know what you do and you figure that what you do is in the report that you would want to stop it. Otherwise, unless you saw the report, are confused. But we know you ain't see it. All right. But I will leave that there. So there were 4 investigations. The first one by the National Security Council. The second one commissioned by the Police Service Commission, not the government, contrary to what Mr. Griffith continues to say, that the government did that. In fact, we will come to that just now. The third one was commissioned by the Police Complaints Authority, and the fourth by the TTPS. 4 investigations taking place into the issuance of firearm users license while Gary Griffith was Commissioner of Police. 2 were finished. The National Security Council and Stanley John. We don't know what is the status of the PCA, if that is still ongoing, because I haven't heard anything from them. And the TTPS, their investigation is still ongoing. So one can assume that perhaps, as part of that investigation, Mr. Jacob may have requested that I don't know, because Mr. Griffith went to court. The court say, present the evidence. You say your wife's phone was tapped, show us the evidence, and we could take it from there. In the absence of evidence, you're expecting us to make a declaration on hearsay. Kuturu Bakanal, we not about that. So unless you could come and prove the allegation that you're making, case dismissed. He wasn't too pleased about that. So that is what happened there. But Mr. Griffith, claims that a whistleblower would have shown him the actual document that Mr. Jacob sent to the director of the SSC. Now that is at the highest level of the TTPS and the highest level of the SSC, right? That is as confidential as it could get. Outside of the National Security Council, that is an extremely confidential document. In fact, not even the lower rank and file of the police service would be able to see such a document. So you had to be high up there. So Mr. Griffith claims that a whistleblower showed him. He actually saw the document. He said that. So I don't know if it was the actual document itself or if somebody took a copy of it and showed it to Mr. Griffith. That's what he said. Whistleblower. Then he comes now and he says with this latest development where the FIU was seeking to get information, banking information on his account, the wife account, and so on, that another whistleblower also gave him information. Let me see if I get it exactly. I want to make sure I get it here, right? What he said. I want to quote him. I was fortunate. This is a post that Mr. Griffith put out on his Facebook page 5 days ago. And in seeking to explain how he got the info, he says, I was fortunate, perhaps because of my former position, to have whistleblowers, multiple, plural, share information with me. But this abuse of power can be targeted against anyone, including persons close to and aligned with the present government. I was fortunate because of my former position to have whistleblowers share information with me. What information do these whistleblowers share with you, Mr. Griffith? Because of, as you say, your former position. You're fortunate. So you have whistleblower in the police service, you have whistleblowers in the FIU. Where else you have whistleblowers? Who just waiting for the opportunity, sir, to call you and say, Gary, I have some info, boy. I send in your WhatsApp there. Watch this. Let me meet up somewhere now. Where? You're home? I pass in and check you. I have something I want you to see. Begs the question, right? These people are supposed to being, they have the, what's the word I'm looking for? They have the wherewithal to be in contact with or in possession of confidential information. And because they like Gary, because as he say his former position, they feel that they need to be giving him information about possibly investigations taking place into him and others. And since he calls it whistleblowing, right? Whistleblowing. So they perceive wrongdoing. They believe that Gary is being persecuted by the government and Gary needs to know every step of the way what is happening, who investigating him and who asking for what. So it tells me that even if the police or any other investigative body has any solid reason to investigate Mr. Griffith, there could be no proper investigation taking place because Mr. Griffith seems to have eyes and ears everywhere. So any investigation that takes place into him, based on any cogent evidence or otherwise, it appears he would know from the outset and would be kept abreast of the investigation at every step of the way so that he know how to move. Right? And I would ask Mr. Griffith a question. Is this the type of behavior you sanctioned when you were the Commissioner of Police? That anybody who has access to this information could choose to pick up the phone and call somebody who is under investigation and tell them, hey, we have something here, but something going on. Regardless of where they fit in the society, right? And the question must also be asked. Is it based on all of these whistleblowers that Mr. Griffith have all over the place? We don't know. I suppose in time to come, we will hear about other whistleblowers in other places where any other investigation taking place into him, they would know. So perhaps soon enough, we will hear something about the PCA investigation. Perhaps soon enough, we'll hear something about the police investigation. Yeah, because he have eyes and ears. You're asking the question. Could Mr. Griffith's eyes and ears be used to get information about members of the UNC who are under police investigation? Who might want to know what the police know? How far is the investigation progressing? How much do they know? Here now, you can't ask your whistleblower to find out that from a boy. You have people everywhere who have access to the most sensitive of information, right? So he could do that. Nobody telling Mr. Griffith about this. Mr. Griffith ain't talking about that because he calling it whistleblowing. But nobody in authority is coming out to say, where do we draw the line between whistleblowing? Where do we draw the line between breach of confidentiality, right? Where do we draw the line between whistleblowing and tipping off? Because for me, this is tipping off. Because when it is, Dr. Rowley told us that Marlene McDonald told him, that Kamla Prasad Bisesa told her that the police was coming to lock her up, that her arrest was imminent. And he made that disclosure. The police were inclined to open an investigation into Mrs. Prasad Bisesa for the crime of tipping off. And the only reason why that investigation didn't go anywhere is because Ms. McDonald refused to cooperate with the police, right? She didn't want to take the matter any further, and so she was not prepared to confirm or deny what Dr. Rowley said with respect to that. And that matter died a natural death, as the police indicated. Ms. McDonald does not wish to proceed. She doesn't wish to cooperate with us, and therefore that's the end of that. We can't do anything else. We can't take it any further. So just for Mrs. Prasad Bisesa telling Marlene McDonald she was going to be arrested, Mrs. Prasad Bisesa could have been, one, the subject of an investigation, and perhaps two, have a case over her head in the courts today. Simply for telling somebody the police come and figure, I have somebody in the police or high up and they tell me that. So if it is they were willing to charge Mrs. Prasad Bisesa for something like that, persons giving information to Mr. Griffith of this nature, to me, that is cause for concern. Plenty concern. But I find I'm not hearing nobody talking about that, right? Okay. So the FIU decided to put out a statement in response to the decision of the court. The court describing the FIU's decision to look into Mr. Griffith's bank account information, perhaps to see if Mr. Griffith would have received any significant sums of money based on claims, things that is in the public domain, whether or not he was receiving funds for the issuance of firearm users licenses. The court says an abuse of power. Or you don't have the right to do that unless you have good cause, probable cause. The FIU say, well, we had probable cause. So let me get that here for you. Let me see, where was this published? Right. So I will read for you what the FIU put out. And then, of course, Mr. Griffith, not want to waste time, would have also put out his own statement in response to what the FIU said. Let me just get it here. 1 second. Right, where is this? Where is this? No, we'll deal with you on another day, not today. Right, just now. Give me 1 second, I'm gonna find this thing, folks. Right. So the FIU put out a statement on, what day was this? September 20th. And it reads, the FIU does not act without lawful cause. The Financial Intelligence Unit of Trinidad and Tobago has always applied diligence and reverence for the law in the utilization of its powers. The FIU, therefore, ensures that when requests are made to financial institutions and listed businesses for information, it has sufficient and lawful basis for doing so. Under the FIU-TT Act, the organization can request financial information from a financial institution or listed businesses in several circumstances in order to effectively achieve its intended mandate. The FIU-TT may request information under numerous circumstances. For example, when analyzing a report or reports, collection of data is required for technical analysis. This is required in order to generate activity patterns, trends, and typologies, investigative leads, and also identify possible future behavior. Additionally, the FIU-TT may request information from a financial institution or listed business when it receives a request from a foreign FIU or from local law enforcement authorities for financial information. On receipt of a request from a foreign FIU or from local law enforcement authorities, the FIU-TT must first ensure that the request satisfies all the requirements of Regulations 21 of the FIU-TT Act. Regulation 21 is a statutory safeguard to ensure that the financial information is not gathered in an arbitrary manner, is obtained on the basis of law, and is not used for any purpose other than for which it was lawfully requested. Regulation 21 requires that the FIU-TT shall only provide financial information upon receipt of sufficient data to support a case involving money laundering, terrorist financing, or related crimes. B, the reason for the financial information requested, proof that the request is linked to an ongoing investigation from the head of the agency. D, the purpose for which the information will be used. And E, in the case of a foreign FIU, sufficient information from the foreign FIU to show that the request complies with domestic law of the foreign FIU. All requests for information made by the FIU-TT are conducted within the parameters of the Act. Under its existing mandate, the FIU-TT will not make a request for financial information arbitrarily or without lawful cause. So they keep making that point, right? So they say, in other words, we didn't just jump out ourselves because we hear something in the wind and so let we investigate Gary. They didn't do that. They say this, we know why we requested it, and it was based on, we don't do things haphazardly. All right, so just understand that. It wasn't that the director was sitting in the office and he see a newscast come up or he was reading the papers about the issuance of firearm users licenses and he decided, let me investigate Gary. That's what he's saying. We didn't do it. We didn't do that. In addition to suspicious transaction reports and suspicious activity reports made by financial institutions and listed businesses, any person can make a voluntary information report, which the judge didn't mention, to the FIU-TT where he or she has knowledge or suspicions of money laundering. In other words, a whistleblower. You see the same term Mr. Griffith want to use, whistleblower, gave him the information. The FIU is saying any whistleblower could come to us and make a report about so and so, and we are obligated to look into it. Yeah? So it's not just Mr. Griffith have whistleblowers. They go on to say, VIRs are accepted by the FIUTT as Section 52 of the Proceeds of Crime Act makes it an offense for any person who has knowledge or suspicion that another person is engaged in money laundering to fail to disclose such knowledge or suspicion to a police officer of the rank of sergeant or above, or to the FIUTT. So it could have been a police officer who have information, went to the FIUTT and say, well, here, what I have this information on Mr. Griffith. Right, or they could do a thing. Look, we have this here. Right? Okay. I continue. Information and reports received by the FIUTT are confidential and protected by law. It is an offense for an FIUTT officer, including the director of the FIU, to disclose information that has come into his or her possession by virtue of his or her employment in the FIU to any other person other than in the proper exercise of his or her duties. It is also a criminal offense for any person who receives information from the FIU in the course of his or her business to disclose that information to any other person, or even the fact that the FIU may be conducting an analysis of information. The FIU takes any breach of this confidentiality requirement with grave seriousness, notwithstanding, where any such breach is discovered, it will be pursued to the fullest extent of the law. The FIU acknowledges the judgment of the Honorable Justice Rampersad dated 11 September 2023 and notes that the declarations made by the Honorable Judge prohibits the FIU from acting in the absence of an SAR other than in circumstances where Section 11 of the Act is invoked. The FIU maintains that knowledge of whether an STR or SAR has been filed must be held in the strictest of confidence. And the FIU acknowledges that the Honorable Judge's recognition that the director is hamstrung by statute to make any public statement of the investigation in existence of same. Therefore, the FIU will continue to maintain its obligation of confidentiality concerning all intelligence and information received unless compelled to disclose such information by order of the Supreme Court of Trinidad and Tobago. So you know what I'm saying here? The FIU is saying any one of our employees who feel because they like Gary, who because they figure Gary was the best commissioner this country ever had, and who feel that Gary should come back as commissioner of police, and figure that the government wicked, that they don't like Gary and that's why they get rid of Gary. And I want to help Gary. They come and they give him this information. They went to great pains here to remind such persons that what you're doing is an offense. That while you want to call yourself a whistleblower, under the Act you are not, because there was no wrongdoing on the part of the FIU here. The court never said the FIU did anything wrong. What the judge said is that it may have been an abuse of power. But again, in order for the FIUTT to refute that claim, they would have had to disclose in the court, well, look, this was the basis upon which we requested this information. The police or whoever is investigating Mr. Griffith for X, Y, and Z, and they made a request on us. So in that case, they would have confirmed for Mr. Griffith and his lawyer that an investigation is taking place, which could possibly constitute tipping off, right? So they were hamstrung, as is said here, from making any revelations. And unfortunately, it cost them the case. Because the director had to decide, do I present and tell the court, well, this is what we have. This is what came to us, and this is the basis on which we did it. Letting Mr. Griffith and lawyer know, well, hey, yeah, they investigated you. Or do we keep quiet and hope that good sense will prevail and not reveal if an investigation is in fact taking place and leave Mr. Griffith wondering in his pants, am I being investigated or not? And they chose the latter, to not say. And they lost the case. Now the media, because I saw the Express did an editorial and Mr. Griffith talking about how much money it costs in the state and costing the taxpayers, because I think the court awarded him $400,000 plus legal costs in this matter, right? Let me read Mr. Griffith's response to the FIU and the hypocrisy contained therein. And to me, it highlights why Mr. Griffith should never be Commissioner of Police in this country again, because he has an issue with confidentiality. Because notwithstanding, here it is that the FIU, the head of the FIU, was placed in a precarious position to disclose or not to disclose whether or not an investigation into Mr. Griffith is taking place. And he chose not to disclose, to the detriment of his own case and the pockets of the taxpayers. Yes, because Mr. Griffith got 400,000. So he loved to do them thing and beat teachers. He took this one to court, that one to court for saying this and saying that, and he get a 200,000 by so and 100,000 by so. Every time he went in the court, he liked to boast so much money he gets. All right, so 3 days ago, Mr. Griffith responded to that letter I just read. And it reads, "No FIU. Your abuse of authority is costing the taxpayers huge sums of money." So already, you see what he has done there, right? Let me make it about the government and focus on the money. Let us not focus on what was done and why it was done and and the reason why it was possibly done. Let me don't focus on that. So let me rile up the population one time to talk about how much money the government wasting and people suffering and they can't buy food and they can't make ends meet. They can't send their children to school, but the government only losing case and there's a set of money being paid out. Well, here what? Why don't you take the 400,000 you get and go and give it out? Since you're so concerned about the taxpayers, why don't you say, "No, sir, Your Honor, I am concerned about the amount of money that these institutions are costing the taxpayers. They're not costing themselves money or the government, it's the taxpayers. And because I'm so concerned about the taxpayers, I would like to ask the court to waive any restitution that you may order for me. So the 400,000 that you tell them payment, I don't want it. I don't want it. Just let them pay my legal costs. Keep the 400,000. If the legal say that, no, he wouldn't say that. But he's so concerned about how much money it costs them, the taxpayers. Because every time you run to the courthouse and you win, you get a piece of money. Right? But is the taxpayers' money coming into your pocket, Mr. Griffith? It's not like it's going out of the country. It's coming into your bank account, Mr. Griffith. So why are you upset? Why are you concerned how much it costs the taxpayers? If you're so concerned as a taxpayer and as a citizen, tell the court you don't want no money. You ain't gonna do that. You wouldn't do that. The NTA took note of the FIU's press release in the aftermath of the unprecedented court loss and shares the following points. The FIU's response to the court ruling is misleading and contradicts the court's description of their actions as an abuse of power. Really? The FIU failed to provide a justifiable reason for attempting to access the bank accounts of numerous individuals, contrary to their release. So it wasn't only his account alone that the FIU was seeking information for, right? So this thing about is the government, and the government doing this because they're seeking to prosecute and persecute a political opponent is rubbish. Absolute trash, because it's not him alone. Based on what he has admitted here, it's him and other people they were asking for. But he's the only one who decided to run to court to complain, right? And I don't think it was about the money. I think it was a genuine attempt to get information as to whether or not he's in fact the subject of a police investigation. And if so, what type of investigation and what would have prompted that? And it failed miserably. Because the FIU director inside me, I'm not saying that, I'm not giving you no heads up, right? Going again. The FIU had multiple opportunities to justify its actions in the court, but failed to provide any evidence, resulting in significant financial losses that the taxpayers will bear. Again, if you're so concerned about the taxpayers, tell the court you don't want the 400,000. Put your money where your mouth is. The FIU's suggestion that they had lawful cause to access multiple accounts simultaneously is highly implausible and could lead to further legal actions against them. So he's putting them on notice and might come back to get some more money from the same taxpayers that I'm so concerned about. The FIU's attempt to hide behind confidentiality raises concerns as it implies that they may not present a case and provide evidence to justify their actions if sued, potentially costing taxpayers tens of millions. So he come back with that again. So keep focusing to distract the public, not from the fact that you have been the target of a number of different agencies, right? Seeking to get certain information that possibly may be linked to one or perhaps all four of the investigations into the issuance of firearm user licenses. Let me try and distract them from that and focus on how much money it costs any taxpayer. So that is all the population we're talking about. Oh, they only running down Gary winning and how much money. But we're not thinking about why are they going after Gary like this? An abuse of power compounded by unbridled arrogance, which shows little regard for taxpayers' money. See, come back with that again. The FIU's response is reminiscent of those within the present government itself, and as such, leaves many to speculate on if the FIU is but another independent institution which has fallen victim to political interference. You know what I find interesting about this release of Mr. Griffith, in his response to the FIU, their release, he made no mention of the whistleblower, no defense of the whistleblower. He didn't challenge what the FIU said with respect to persons who are in the employ of the FIU giving information. He says it's a whistleblower. That's what he calling them. The FIU says, no, you are no whistleblower. No, you're a traitor. You are no whistleblower, right? You're a tattletale. You are an informant for Mr. Griffith, but you are no whistleblower. And Mr. Griffith did not address that. He didn't challenge the FIU's challenge of his characterization of the person who gave him the information as a whistleblower. Why did you conveniently leave that off? Because you know that what the FIU is saying there makes sense. As the former commissioner of police, you must understand what a whistleblower is. And if it is he was still the commissioner of police, and I would ask him, if you were still the commissioner of police, and you were the one who had sent correspondence to the SSA, requesting that somebody phone get tapped, and that information was leaked to the individual. Let's say it was a member of the government, a member of the opposition, because you would not form no party yet and all of that. You would not have no NTA if you had to go back your work as commissioner of police. And so I asked the question, if you were still sitting in the commissioner's office, Mr. Griffith, and you were the commissioner who requested somebody's phone get tapped, and the person found out and came on to the media and said, look, you see so, and they took you to court and whatnot. And the person described whoever they get the information from as a whistleblower. Would you, Mr. Griffith, have agreed to such a characterization? Would you have applauded the officer who did that, who gave that information to whoever? Would you have said, job well done? Would you have given them commendation, a medal, a certificate, a promotion, Mr. Griffith, for doing that? Or would you have called a press conference to call this person traitor and say that they are guilty of treason and that such persons have no place in the police service? They have no respect for confidentiality and all of that. That more sounds like what you would have done, Mr. Griffith. Not the picture you're trying to paint now. That it was a whistleblower. And what the person did was the right thing to do. Because again, it leaves one to ask the question, if you have persons who are willing to give you such confidential information about investigations, could anybody, could Barry Paderath pick up the phone and call you and say, here, wanna find out if they investigated me for that 135,000 I give Kamala, and I tell them I can't remember what it was for now. I know they're supposed to be investigating, but I ain't hear nothing, so I don't know. I'm uneasy. You can't find out that from me. Or perhaps Mr. Member of Parliament for Cuba North could call you and say, Gary, boy, you know, you can't find out from they still investigated me for that prostitution and human trafficking, boy. Because since Devant Maraj did the sort of the affidavit and so on, I know what's going on. I want to know. You can't find out that from me since you have eyes and ears all over the place. Or maybe Mrs. Prasad Bisesa say, Gary, you can't find out if it is, if they investigated me for anything. Again, that same transaction with Paderath. You can't find that out. You have anybody in the Integrity Commission could tell you that? You have anybody in the hierarchy of the police service could tell you that? Munilal, any of the others who may be the subject of a police investigation. In the same way, Ram Logan could have picked up the phone and ask him to call David West and ask David West if he retract his statement. Could any other member of the existing member of the party who sits in the parliament pick up the phone and call him and ask him? And don't even matter be in the parliament. It could be outside too. You can pick up the phone and call him and ask him, here, wanna link it from now. You can't find out from where. Because it seemed, as he said, based on his former position, so maybe he established relationships within the police service and persons are still loyal to him and have no problem giving him information. But he doesn't see it as that. He sees it as they are whistleblowers and worthy of perhaps a presidential award. So perhaps the whistleblower should have been on the list today to receive an award later for this that he has done. Right? Well, let me go back to another thing Mr. Griffith has posted. Yesterday, one day ago, he puts out another post. The PNM's playbook in the Stanley John hiring was clear. Hire someone with no investigative experience or authority at a huge cost to the taxpayers. Come back with that again. Do so because they can then write a report without affording fairness to persons mentioned in the report, hence favoring them. Leak the report to friends in the media. Attempt to lay it in Parliament where one can lie without legal consequences. Have their social media bloggers treat the report as fact when it is really a bed of lies. He goes on to say, fortunately, at this point in time, they are only preaching to their choir, as all right-thinking people know that this plot has been exposed as one big conspiracy to smear the name of one political opponent. Well, first of all, Mr. Griffith, when it is Stanley John was retained to conduct this inquiry, you were not a political opponent. You were still hoping to hold on to your work as Commissioner of Police. It had no NTA. You were not in cahoots with the UNC. There was no accommodation between the NTA and the UNC because no NTA existed. You had no political leanings because, as you said, you did not vote in the 2020 general election because, as Commissioner of Police, you felt it would have been improper for the Commissioner to take political sides. So you refrained from exercising your franchise. So there was no issue of politics. So when Stanley John was retained to conduct this inquiry, at that point in time, you were still Commissioner of Police acting, right? You were still Commissioner of Police acting. So there was no issue of Stanley John being hired, as you claim here, Mr. Griffith, to smear the name of a political opponent. You were not a political opponent at that time. So if you are saying that is the motive for retaining the services of Mr. John, you're playing smart with foolishness. Further to that, contrary to what he has been saying and continues to repeat, that the government hired Stanley John, it is a damn lie. It was the Police Service Commission that retained Stanley John's services, not the government. But of course, we know the waterfront ilk will continue to run with that story. That is, the government do that, and Rowley and Hines, because they wanted to get rid of Gary. And that is why they did that. Right? Not the facts that it was the Police Service Commission headed by Bliss Sipasad that took the decision to retain Stanley John. So Stanley John's report went to the PSC, not to the Prime Minister, not to the Cabinet, not to the National Security Council. It went to the Police Service Commission. The Police Service Commission, right? And whatever the Prime Minister has read with respect to that report is what was published in the newspapers. For all of us to see a well-oiled criminal enterprise, that headline, that article that was carried in the Trinidad Express, that is where Dr. Rowley got the information. It's not like he got a copy of the report. He had no entitlement to such a report because he didn't commission it. And the PSC is an independent entity, and they are under no obligation to give Dr. Rowley any report. So stop with that nonsense, please, and misleading people about it's the government that did that. They didn't have to do that. They were concerned. They wanted to ensure, that is the PSC, that the merit list that they sent to the Parliament to have any one of those persons appointed Commissioner of Police was above reproach. And that decision to appoint Stanley John was part of the due diligence process. Because the members of the Police Service Commission are paid. They ain't doing that work for free. They get paid and they have a responsibility to ensure that any name that they send to the Parliament to possibly be appointed Commissioner of Police, that such a person, as I said, must be above reproach. Right? They must be able to withstand the most robust of scrutiny. And if it is they send a merit list to the Parliament that is no good, that is tainted, that has names of persons who have possibly criminal backgrounds, and such a person is appointed Commissioner of Police and is subsequently arrested and charged for wrongdoing that took place prior to them being appointed, that is on the PSC's head. And again, I ask the question, when does due diligence end? When do they stop the due diligence? So when it is that the merit list was taken to the president and information subsequently came to the PSC, which caused them to have concern about one or more of the nominees. And you see, they've always sought to make this merit list about Gary Griffith. But there was 4 investigations into the firearm issuance of FULs. And this investigation would have included, as I will read just now, senior police officers, some of whom applied for the position of Commissioner of Police. So we don't know whether or not the information given to Bliss Sipasad was about Gary Griffith or any of the other members of the police service, of the police service who may have offered themselves, right? In the same way, Mr. Griffith would have gone back and offered his name a second time to be selected as Commissioner of Police in the last round where Ula Christopher would have been successful. The same way, It's just this time, Ulla Christopher's name was at the top of the list and the government was inclined to go with her. But we didn't see the rest of the merit list. But they seem to have all the answers. But let me continue. Where did I reach? Right. He goes on to say, fortunately, at this point in time, they are only preaching to their choir, as all right-thinking people know that this plot has been exposed as one big conspiracy to smear the name of a political opponent. Because the entire expensive campaign entitled Well-Oiled Criminal Enterprise has fallen flat. And over 2 years later, not one senior officer, not one firearms holder, not one firearms dealer has been arrested and charged with any offense related to John's report. And if the report had any substance, why hasn't McDonald Jacob or Ulla Hayward Christopher revoked the FULs of any holder in relation to the report? In fact, the only thing they have been able to accomplish is to fuel the belief among citizens that our institutions are vulnerable to political interference. Now, as the former Commissioner of Police, Mr. Griffith should know that police investigations in this country take forever and a day. He should know that. So this nonsense that he continues to peddle that after 2 years, nobody ain't get locked up because of the John report. Stanley John is not a policeman. Stanley John is not a detective. Stanley John conducted an inquiry at the behest of the Police Service Commission, and as a result of that inquiry, he generated a report which he provided to his employer, the Police Service Commission. The police cannot take this report, read it and say, yeah, we're going to lock up this one, that one, and the next. What that report would do is simply to provide a basis for further investigation. So based on what is in the report, the police will then identify what they now need to add to their own investigation, to widen the scope as to what they're going to investigate, right? And as he said, it's been 2 years. It's 9 years they investigating Prison Gate. 2 attorneys, 2 lawyers accused of copying and pasting witness statement to defraud the state of millions of dollars. 2 lawyers. Gerald Ramdeen, Varun Debedine. 2 lawyers. We had a master of the court in seeing the documents who first drew attention to this enterprise. Said, based on what I see in here and reading, I am seeing evidence here of witness of copying and pasting. I am seeing something here that to me points to a crime. Further to that, the director of public prosecutions, before any file even came to him, and I assume the file ain't reached to him yet, on the basis of what he saw, right? Same thing the master saw. He said, I am of the unflinching view. This is the DPP. He ain't get no file, but just based on what was a cursory glance, to borrow Farley's too, of these very same witness statements, right? Because of course his department would have been privy to that because it's a criminal matter or whatever it is, and you're looking to get money from the state. So just taking a cursory glance of these witness statements, the DPP said he's of the unflinching view that a crime may have been committed that warrants police investigation. The DPP says so. The master of the court says so. Just on a cursory glance of what they see, that they're ready to charge. 9 years later, going on 10 years, they're still investigating 2 lawyers. One of the lawyers basically confessed, wrote a missive to the court, telling the court, well, you see, yes, I did that. And the reason why I did it was because I had so much work to do. Because in addition to representing these clients, I was also an attorney for the Commission of Inquiry. I think it was in Takliko or something like that. And I was just so overwhelmed with all of this work, and I had so many briefs because the state kept giving me briefs, and I had so much to deal with that I just didn't have the time to, And since all the prisoners is more or less talking the same language, and and I noticed some similarities in the injuries that several of these prisoners would have suffered, in trying to transpose what the person said, I simply would have used the same language that 2 and 3 and 4 others would have said to the letter and put it there. Because apparently they have a rule book or a playbook in the prison as to how to beat a prisoner. Take him out of the cell, take the baton, hit him 2 baton in his ribs, slam him against the wall, hit him 2 kicks in his ribs, bust his jaw. So you're following step 1, do this. Step 2, do that. Step 3, right? You twist his arm, You fracture his wrist. This is how you, so it's a play-by-play. So this is how, so all prisoners would suffer the same type of beating to the letter. So therefore, what one says is basically the same thing, because apparently prison officers and police beat all the prisoners in the same way and inflict the same injuries. So that is why I thought it appropriate. And the court said, we ain't taking that. Keep your statement. We don't want that. Right? Go from here with that. You will be subject of a police investigation, and if it is determined that you committed a crime, you will face the full extent of the law. 9 years. 9 years, and we're still waiting. So when Mr. Griffith wants to come and tell you, 2 years later after the Stanley John report, senior officer in your lockup and no firearms dealer has gotten arrested, and Ula and McDonald Jacob didn't. On what basis? If the police investigation into the matter is ongoing, 8 persons have been arrested with respect to the issuance of firearm users licenses so far, which includes senior officers. But he say that is not because of the John report. That would have been based on investigations that would have started under him, right? So it started under you, and they got arrested 2 years or 3 years after, you think, whatever as the case may be. So these investigations take a while. So to try and come and fool the population to say, well, it's 2 years and nobody ain't get locked up. We feel as the investigation the police have. How long now the PCA investigating the same matter and they haven't come to a conclusion yet with respect to their investigation? How long? So to come with this dotish talk about 2 years and Stanley John report, you can't lock up nobody based on that. This is one man who asked questions. This is one man who interviewed some people and got information and compiled a report for his employer. This is not an official police investigation report, so the police can't lock up nobody based on that. So for Gary to come with this stupidness about nobody can get locked up based on the Stanley John report, I want to ask him again, if you were the commissioner of police, would you sanction your senior officers simply upon receipt of a report to say, go and lock up this one and that one, without any police involvement in this investigation? As you said, civilians can't investigate police. You keep repeating that. So how are you now advocating for the police to lock up or to take away firearm users' licenses from persons based on a report that was compiled by a civilian, as you say, who had no local standby and no jurisdiction to investigate anybody? So as far as you're concerned as the former commissioner of police, that report from Stanley John is null and void and of no effect. And if that is what you're telling us, you cannot come in the next hand and say, well, how come nobody can get locked up because of the report? You're playing smart with foolishness. And you have the support of your partners in crime pushing that same stupid talk. But not everybody is of the waterfront ilk. Miss us with that BS, right? But I want to read something as to highlight the hypocrisy of Mr. Griffith. Me, I know see with him, I know see with him. I don't know beef. I've never met the guy. We've spoken once or twice on the phone for an issue related to our alma mater, but that was about it. Right? So I will no allegiances to him, nor him to me. But let me read this. Griffith files lawsuit against the Police Service Commission. And this is an article dated September 20th, 2021. But there's just one part I want to read in this, right? Well, 2. Former Commissioner of Police Gary Griffith has filed his lawsuit against the PSC over its decision to allegedly suspend him pending an investigation into allegations of corruption related to the issuance of firearm users' licenses. Guardian Media understands that Griffith's legal team, led by Ramesh Maraj, filed his judicial review lawsuit this afternoon. In a brief interview, Attorney Larry Lala confirmed that the lawsuit, Griffith is claiming that the PSC's decision was arrived at in a manner that was unfair. Griffith is also claiming that his rights to natural justice and protection of the law under the Constitution were breached. As a part of the lawsuit, Griffith is seeking an injunction staying the Commission's decision and reinstating him pending the determination of the lawsuit. In his legal letter to the Commission's chairman, Bliss Prasad, Griffith claimed that the move communicated in an email on Friday evening was illegal, irrational, and in breach of the rules of natural justice. Griffith suggested that his suspension was solely based on the Commission initiating an investigation into the issuing of FULs and the handling of a recent incident involving the head of the TTPS legal unit, Christian Chandler, on September 1st. Hear what he said? He suggested that his suspension was solely based on the Commission initiated an investigation into the issuance of firearm users license. This was Gary Griffith in September of 2021, 20th of September, 2 years ago, saying that his suspension was based purely on the commission initiating an investigation, but today he's telling you the government do it. Who will really do it, Gary? Is it the commission, as you said, in exactly 2 years ago, or is it the government? We're confused because the PSC is not the government and the government is not the PSC. So 2 years ago, you said it's because of an investigation and you call it an investigation. The PSC call it an inquiry. You call it an investigation. So you consider it an investigation. But here's where the hypocrisy lies. Let me get this. Griffith, now, for those of us who've been following this story would know that, and as I would have read before, you see, Mr. Griffith has taken issue with Stanley John's report, calling it, he's made the point on numerous occasions, Stanley John is a civilian can investigate police, yada, 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 how much money they pay Stanley John. He has an issue with the Stanley John report in every way, right? But yesterday was yesterday and today is today. This same article 2 years ago, when he was still Commissioner of Police, Griffith noted that he had been contacted by Justice John on several occasions and provided all the assistance that he, Justice John, requested, including records and interviews with police officers. He goes on to say, however, at no time did he make or ask me to respond to any allegations whatsoever against me or the performance of the functions of my office. Griffith pointed to correspondence from Justice John dated September 18th, in which he, Justice John, allegedly reiterated that investigating Gary Griffith was beyond his remit. This is indeed self-explanatory. However, it would be plain and beyond doubt to anyone reading that letter that I, as Commissioner of Police, am not under any investigation by Justice John. So today, he has an issue with the Stanley John report. But at the time when it was initiated, and he was still Commissioner of Police, because Justice John gave him the assurance that he was not subject of the investigation, that investigating him was beyond his remit, and he felt secure that nothing that he did as Commissioner of Police, none of the actions that he took as Commissioner of Police would find its way into that report, that there would be no questioning and no inquiry as to his role. He was satisfied with that, and therefore he had no problems with Justice John, a civilian, conducting this investigation. In fact, as I just read there, he was contacted, he said, he was contacted on several occasions by Justice John. Let me see if I get it here again, Right. Where did it disappear to? Yes. Griffith noted that he had been contacted by Justice John on several occasions and provided all the assistance that Justice John required, including records and interviews with police officers. So in other words, he cooperated with the investigation, as he called it, that was conducted by a civilian. The same investigation, which today he's telling you was wrong, was improper, was illegal, because Justice John is a civilian. But every time on these several occasions, as he said, when Justice John called him and say, here what now, I need to get this information. Did he ever say to Justice John, here what? I have an issue giving you this information because you're a civilian. And I don't approve of civilians attempting to investigate police. At any of those times that he was contacted, did he ever say that to Justice John? Did he ever call a press conference to say, I, as Commissioner of Police, wanted to be put on record that I do not support this investigation by Justice John because he's a civilian and should not be allowed to conduct any investigation of police, that only police could investigate police. This Mr. Griffith, who loved to call press conferences, did he ever hold a press conference to express his disapproval of this inquiry? No, he didn't. Based on what is said in this article, he cooperated with Justice John, gave him records, confidential records, and also facilitated interviews between Justice John and police officers to in furtherance of Justice John's commission, which was to get information on the issuance of firearm users' licenses. He had no problem with that when he was commissioner, and he sanctioned the investigation that today he's telling you is no good. That today he's telling you that same investigation was set up. by the government so that they could prosecute and persecute a single political opponent himself. But when this investigation or inquiry started, he had no such concerns because he was assured by Justice John, your name, I have nothing to do with you. This inquiry have nothing to do with you. Your name should not come up at any point in time, nor should it appear in any final report. So you good, don't worry. Whatever it is you doing as Commissioner of Police, whatever you did to issue firearm users licenses, rest assured, I'm not asking no question about that. I don't want to know nothing about what you do. I go with that. So you go ahead, Justice John. Tell me what you need. You want to talk to this officer, that officer? No problem, I'll make it happen. You want files into this one, that one, the next one? No problem, I'll make it happen. You want to know who was all of the firearms dealers who get firearm users licenses? No problem, we will give you that. What else you need? You call me any day and any time, and whatever you need to do your investigation, go ahead and do it. Especially if such an inquiry or an investigation could implicate one or two of the other persons who are challenging me for the post of Commissioner of Police. Because there's another article in which he wrote to the Police Service Commission, indicating to them that in light of the Stanley John inquiry, he would be taking a leave of absence so as not to give any impression that he is trying to influence the outcome of that investigation. So he will step aside. But he's also calling on the Police Service Commission to ask the other persons who applied for the work and who are still on the job in the police service to do like he did and take a voluntary leave of absence so that to remove any doubt or any suspicion that they may be trying to influence the outcome of the investigation by telling officers what to say and what not to say, to hide documents and all of that. He wrote to the Police Service Commissioner and told them to that, send all of these people on leave pending the outcome of the investigation, make it an even playing field. It can't be me alone. That's what he said. So he was supporting the investigation. At no point in time did he challenge it. But after the report came out and the contents was damning and his name get called up more than anybody else in the report, all of a sudden, Stanley John is a civilian. He didn't realize that before. All of a sudden, Stanley John cannot conduct any investigation into the police. Only police could do that. But when you were giving him files, when you were arranging for him to interview police officers and whatever other requests he made of you and you were facilitating it at the drop of a pin, when you were doing all of that, you had no issue with the fact that he was a civilian. But if your name didn't mention in the report, you wouldn't have had an issue with that inquiry. You wouldn't have had an issue with the report. In fact, you would have told the Prime Minister, go ahead and lay it in the Parliament. Go ahead and publish it because my name not called up there, so I have no issue with it. But it is in the public domain and it's not looking good for you. So you have issues now, right? You have issue with the report. So don't lay it. But my main issue and my main concern is this thing about people giving information to Mr. Griffith, who is a private citizen. Just like he says Stanley John is, he's a civilian. He's no longer Commissioner of Police. He's not a SRP. He's nothing in the TTPS. He's the lowest of the low. He's not even a part of the TTPS anymore. I wonder if they took back their uniform from him, right? He is not entitled in any way, form, or fashion to be receiving information, whether it's about himself or anybody else. And I am concerned that such information is being given to Mr. Griffith from not just one institution, several institutions, right? And we don't know what other information he's in possession of. And given the fact that Mr. Griffith's party, the NTA, is now in league with the UNC for the 2025 general election, as he has indicated he intends to continue this arrangement, this accommodation. Well, they call it an accommodation, but it would perhaps develop into something else by 2025. He knows that between now and the time election is called in 2025, if anybody else in the UNC get locked up, it makes their chances of forming the government in 2025 all the more difficult. So the UNC can ill afford any further arrests between now and 2025. They can ill afford any further scandals between now and 2025. They can ill afford anything happening to damage the party's chances at the polls between now and 2025. And since it is abundantly clear that the NTA cannot win a general election on its own, they need to ride the coattail of the UNC. So it is in their best interest to ensure that between now and 2025, that the UNC, right, that arrangement remains, well, I can't even use the word pristine, because it ain't that. So it is not inconceivable to believe that if in an attempt to avoid any further scandals or any further arrests or anything like that between now and 2025, that if information persons feel they need to provide Mr. Griffith with information with respect to any investigations involving any senior member of the UNC, that perhaps such information could be shared with such persons, right? That perhaps depending on this relationship between Mr. Griffith and whoever is giving him this information and the position that such a person holds, could we see such investigations being thwarted or such investigations being interfered with in an attempt to forestall any arrest until after the general election of 2025? We need to be concerned that Mr. Griffith has no care for confidentiality. Because if as a former commissioner of police, you could have WhatsApp messages between yourself and the current Minister of National Security, and when it is convenient for you to be sharing these WhatsApp messages with UNC operatives, UNC members of parliament, for them to come in the parliament and talk about that and read out transcripts and then share it with the media and have it posted on social media, the electronic and print media, it tells me something about you. And in the same way that the FIU identifies that it is a crime, a criminal offense, any other jurisdiction, Mr. Griffith would have had questions to answer. What information were you privy to? What investigations were you privy to when you sat in the commissioner's chair that you can now share with certain persons? Maybe perhaps that's why the FIU wanted to do an investigation. But you see, the court found an issue with what the FIU did, looking at people's bank accounts, supposedly without a suspicious activity report or a suspicious transaction report. So in the absence, the court is saying, in the absence of those two, in the absence of a bank or any other financial institution sending you information of any transaction conducted by any of the clients which they think might point to money laundering or any other financial crime, that you are not to request banking information. Perhaps if the FIU had done that between 2010 to 2015, we would not have had Nelson Gate, because they would have, in requesting information on Gerald Ramdeen's bank account, they would have noticed the irregularities. They would have noticed significant sums of money coming into Mr. Ramdeen's account, allegedly from one particular entity from across the pond, the same individual, the same bank account, right? Hundreds of thousands of pounds allegedly coming into Mr. Ramdeen's account and leaving just as quickly as it arrives, in cash, not in check, in cash. Perhaps if the same level of due diligence, or if it is that they were doing that today, we would not have had Nelson Gate. Or maybe not as much legal briefs would have been given as was given. And perhaps Mr. Ram Logan's term of office as Attorney General would have been much shorter than it was, if what the FIU is doing now was happening then. So for me, there is very good cause for the FIU to continue doing what it is they're doing. Because if there is nothing to hide, there is no cause for concern. If your business is above board and every transaction on your bank account can be explained, you have nothing to worry about. That is between you and the FIU and your financial institution. But of course, we know now that there are moles in the FIU who will be willing to take people's information and put it out there, right? Who would be willing to do that? So if, as I said before, you ain't doing nothing wrong, why are you concerned? All you want to come and dig up and see my account, go right ahead. Any transaction that you want information on, and I know for a fact it's legitimate, I will provide you with the documentation to support say. Because I know everything is above board. So all you can do whatever it is all you want. I'm not concerned about any abuse of power or whatever it is. And what's even more interesting is not the bank tell the man, well, look, we have a request here for you. And the bank didn't tell him that. He find that out from the FIU. So you're putting the bank in jeopardy too. Because if the bank feels the need to comply with a request from an entity that they have a relationship with, they know who the FIU is and what their remit and responsibility is. If we have a request from the FIU, so, and here's my thing, right? Here's my thing. Based on, now I'm not criticizing the court because yes, I have court clothes and I might have a few court pennies, but I don't have court time. I don't have time for that. The judge saying that based on a suspicious activity report or a suspicious transaction report, that is the basis upon which you could approach the financial institution to get information, right? That's what the judge said. In the absence of those two, you can't do that. So if one bank gets a significant transaction or a series of transactions that causes them to write to the FIU to say, we think this may be a suspicious transaction, or we have a series of transactions here that we're concerned about. We don't know for a fact what it is, but as per requirement, we're sending this for you all to look into it. So one bank triggered activity, a suspicious activity report. Suppose this individual has accounts in 4 banks, but only one bank triggered this investigation. So one bank said we have some suspicious activity and the other banks haven't done it. Is the court saying to the FIU, you cannot request any information from any of the other banks to substantiate this report that you have gotten. You're only to work with the one that sent it to you. So even if the person have an account in Scotia and Republic and RBC and FCB, and you only get a report from FCB, and you ain't get no report from the other 3, you are not to request any information from the other 3 to determine if there is a pattern, to determine whether or not this is just a legitimate thing, because we look into is not only, and the purpose of these investigations is not only to nail the person, it's also to exonerate or to clear them as well, to satisfy the bank's concerns and the concerns of the FIU as well. But when we create a narrative to make people feel that anytime the FIU get through is ready, it's fair to get a lockup. No, it's not that. So as the judge said, you could only work with the one bank that sent you the request. Don't ask for the others. Maybe, because if that's the case, then you remember the situation with a certain senior politician who we would have read about, who was paying $40-something thousand a day to his mortgages, going allegedly to different branches of the same bank, depositing $40-something, $42,000 or $43,000 every day in cash, and in the space of 6 months, paid off $1 million mortgages in 6 months, and was running bank to bank. Well, not bank to bank. And what was said was that the FIU, no, the bank, right? The bank where he had the mortgages would have contacted another bank where the person had other accounts to inquire from that bank, because I think the person may have claimed that they withdrew the money from the other bank. And so the bank number 1, whose mortgages were paid off, contacted bank number 2 to ask bank number 2, here now, check this account, this man account, and see if it is, you all seen any significant withdrawals coming out from his account in cash. Because he say that's how he paying his mortgages, but we just want to know now. You all can tell us that? And bank number 2 say, well, based on what we see in here, nah, he ain't take out no money from his account, so no. He didn't do that. Is the court saying the bank number 1 was wrong to do that? Bank number 1 has no investigative powers. So on what basis, on what grounds did bank number 1 contact bank number 2 to find out if money was coming from the accounts in bank number 2 to pay these mortgages? On what basis? So is the judge saying that the banks can't do that? Because basically that's what you're saying. The FIU shouldn't be able to, on the basis of getting a report, shouldn't be able to do those things. Which confuses me, because we have a law here called explain your wealth. So if I have suspicions about your wealth, how am I going to inquire about your wealth? Explain your wealth. So you buy a house, but your salary is $15,000 a month, but you bought a house for $4 million. Is that not suspicion enough to be able to trigger for the authorities to say, you need to explain your wealth and call you in? Or is it that the court is saying, well, unless you have a report from a sanctioned entity to make such requests or to make such reports, to request such information is an abuse of authority, abuse of power? Is that what we're saying? No wonder why some of these officials are able to get away with murder, with ton of money, right? And we wonder, and then we always talk about the politicians and the this and the that. I just asking the question. So, Mr. Griffith getting a piece of money, 400,000 by so, and he only mentioning how much more millions the state could be sued for, because in the meantime, even if he is not aware and there has been no disclosure by the police, because we know, one, based on what he says, his wife's phone was tapped. He claims he saw the correspondence between the Commissioner of Police and the SSA. So, if that is in fact true, we have an investigation going on. And now the FIU gets involved and requesting information with respect to banking information. Now the police could have served a production order, but they would have had to satisfy the court of whatever the situation is. So if the FIU, the police call on the FIU to assist, to get some information, while none of the parties have, because he wrote to the police to ask, is my wife's phone being tapped? The police said, we have time with you. Well, look, put that in the rubbish. Gary should know better than to write us to ask any questions. So they didn't take you on. So he decided to take the police service to court, for the court to compel them to say, if in fact they tapped his wife's phone, and if so, why? The court say, you have no evidence, to hell with you. Go so. Move from here. Right? So he didn't get no confirmation on that side, other than what he claims he saw. FIU come now. You try a shot to see if you can get the FIU to say. And the FIU realize we ain't saying nothing either. So you get shoot down on both sides. The police ain't saying nothing, the FIU ain't saying nothing, but you suspect you're being investigated. So just on the basis of suspicion, you now know how to move, because you know clearly, at least there must be some truth there that I'm under the radar for some reason. Yeah, this ain't, yeah. So you have no confirmation. You don't know why you suspect that it may be related to the FUL, but you don't know for sure. You don't know for sure. You have people inside who will tell you. So, whatever tracks you need to cover, you need to cover. I am not saying any man involved in anything. I am not saying that he committed any crime, but I am simply saying 2 entities, allegedly based on him going to court, looking into his wife and his business dealings. For what reason? We don't know, but we suspect. But this is somebody who is telling you he wants to be the next Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, through an accommodation with the UNC, whose political leader also wants to be the next Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. And they both want to be Prime Minister coming out of the very same election. So it's not that Kamala saying, well, I want to be Prime Minister in 2025, and in 2030, Gary could get his too. No. Gary saying he wants to be Prime Minister in 2025. Kamala saying she wants to be Prime Minister in 2025. Last I checked, Trinidad and Tobago only has 1 Prime Minister at a time. How that working, I don't know. I don't know when I say, well, he will be Prime Minister for 2.5 years, and she will be Prime Minister for 2.5 years. We've never had that before, and I don't know that the Constitution makes for that, unless one of them decides to resign, and the members of the government, with the majority, supports somebody else. So the only other way you can do that is to move a motion of no confidence. Resignation, or move a motion of no confidence in the sitting Prime Minister, where the majority of the members of government say, the government MPs, say we no longer support this person for Prime Minister, and we now support this person, and therefore the President will appoint whoever the majority supports. So I don't know how that's going to work. When he's saying that, because on a radio station, on I-95.5, he said that he is going to be the next Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. And every time the host said, God forbid, he said, yeah, God forbid, I will be the next Prime Minister. So I don't know if he and Kamala spoke about that and they came to some arrangement or whatever it is, but it would be interesting to see how that unfolds in 2025 promises to be a very interesting year. Politically, that is, and maybe otherwise. Very interesting year. I wait to see, right? So, I have other things to discuss, but in the interest of time, because it's already 12:32. But I saw those 2 things and it It was of concern to me. Mr. Griffith continues to play smart with foolishness and mislead the population. Well, he ain't misleading me, and I know he ain't misleading only neither. He ain't misleading only either. Right? So he could go from here with that. So let me see if I can now open the lines. So give me 1 sec here. Just now. Let me just, set this up here. Right, so give me 1 second there. Let me just set this up. Right, so we should be good to go there. Mr. Yates, good afternoon. Hello? 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 Just now, folks, let me just...
Hello?
Yes, sir. Hearing you loud and
clear.
Hello,
yeah. Are you hearing me?
Loud and clear.
Yeah, are you hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing you, loud and clear.
Hello?
Yes, no, man. Yes, sir, go ahead. We're hearing you loud and clear. Yeah.
Well, you would recall that for about 2 years now, since he has been overlooked for the job of being Commissioner of Police again, you notice he has been going all over this country saying one mantra. He has been saying there are things about what is going on in the government and the security system that could bring down this government.
Yes.
This is Gary Griffith. This is what he has been saying. So this is what this little boy who was given a box of matches to play with, now that he's out of office, is threatening the sitting government with things that he would have been privy to as a member of the National Security Council when he was commissioner.
Yes.
That is what this little boy has been doing. No wonder this other character who writes in the Sunday Express, as you know, your friend and my friend, Maraj. No wonder when he was openly, that is Griffith, when he was openly disrespectful to and contemptuous of the Prime Minister, calling him racist and so on. No wonder Ralph Maraj wrote a column, and the headline of the column was "Go Gary Go," meaning I pushing you, I behind you, I supporting you in your contempt for and disrespect for Dr. Rowley. This is Ralph Maraj, a former teacher, former foreign affairs minister, a former dabbling in economics and gas and oil matters and so on. No wonder Gary Griffith has been given the license to be as disrespectful as he has been. Now, how the hell you could be a former commissioner of police and you are telling this country, I know things about what's going on in the security system and in this government that could bring down this government? This is the kind of confidence that Dr. Rowley had reposed in you, seeing you as the best of the list of candidates for commissioner, when your new friends didn't even support you. They didn't even support you, they abstained, which is just a nice way of saying, we're not supporting your nomination. It is surprising that this man could come back here, but it's not surprising. It's not surprising. And I see some of your callers saying that Ralph real quiet. He's not quiet at all.
Yes.
Today, up to today, he gone back to his old mantra about Dr. Rowley interfering with the recommendations to Parliament Weeks. I would like to know, as you mentioned before, and I leave now, I would like to know, how does he know, or how did he know that Griffith was number one on the merit list? I wonder how he knows that. Who told him that? Bliss Peterson? Roger Kivalsing? Some other operative inside, some secretary inside the Police Service Commission? Who told him so? But it's just a package of of a regurgitation of lies and nastiness and mischief. That is the mainstay of this man. But anyway, I prefer to listen to people who have a sense of balance, a sense of sobriety, and underline that word sobriety, Mr. Roman. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Thank you very much and good afternoon.
Thank you, sir. So let me just get this here. Hold on one sec there, Jen. Right. Hey. Hello? Yeah, one sec. That's all. All right, give me 1 second, Jenny. Let me just yeah. Right. Should be connecting.
Yeah, Dominic, good afternoon. Dominic and all those who are locked on, tune in. Dominic, it's a pleasure to have you back. So people only could stop asking me if Dominic coming back, and when he coming back, he is here. My concern from understand, because I think I have a good command of English and understand the way we speak and enough words. When somebody tip you off, that could never be a whistleblower.
Mm-hmm.
Because whistleblower don't tip off, whistleblower expose things that are happening that are unlawful, whether in politics, whether in economy or anything like that. But when you talk about tip off, you're talking about informants. Informants just tip off. Criminal CIs and they just tip off.
Mm-hmm.
So is it Gary Griffith, I'm asking, is saying that he still has a lot of informants? Because remember, he had a number called something called Gary.
Yes.
Where you could have called him.
482
so
Gary.
So he may have built up a cadre of people to give information, because that way he was calling for to give information. I understand on his page it still have the something called Gary.
482 Gary.
482 Gary. So is it that he continues to get information that he used to get when he was the commissioner of police, which he was entitled to, but now as a civilian? Is it that he's still getting that type of information from informants that he was getting when he's a commissioner of police? And these things to me are things that need to be answered. And I guess we will never get answer from Gary Griffith, because he feels that he is it. He is the best thing after sliced bread. But I want to implore him, because he loves to tell us he's a good captain and he studied at Sandhurst and he was top of the class and so given the sense of patriotism and all that. I want to tell him, if you want to sit at the table to speak about crime, first of all, explain to us when you sat before the JSC as the Commissioner of Police and said that they are high-level UNC officials who in bed with criminals in this country. I wanted to address also where Philip Alexander is saying, not me, he says, but when he says scenario, then he says Commissioner of Police. We all know what it means, a logical person. He said that you told him that UNC paid criminals $40 million or something that he said. You need to explain that also to us.
Mm-hmm.
You need to explain also the land that Philip say you give to Inshan when he was Commissioner of Police. Yeah? And finally, you need to go to the court and lift the injunction from the FUL so that all of us will know what is in the report, because remember, you want to sit at the table to treat with crime. And if you want to treat with crime, then you can't come to the table with allegations against your name or your hands dirty and your heart ain't clean and that kind of thing. And as for Ralph Morage, Mr. Yet, you need to understand something. I'm going to give an opinion again here. Hurt people. And what Ralph Morage does, he's projecting the hurt and the emptiness and guilt he feels about himself for not being able to stand up like a man, probably even as a father, probably even as a wife, I mean, a husband, probably even as a politician, he must see the failures of those things that he has internalized it and is now projecting it on others. So what he's saying about others probably is what he feels about himself. Dominic, you have a blessed day, and to all who are listening, happy Republic Day to all, and be safe. Bye.
Thank you, Jen. Indeed, not had an opportunity. Ralph Mirage's commentary for today, but as Mr. Yates said, he has gone back to this meritless nonsense. And as I've had cause to repeat on numerous occasions, this thing about the Prime Minister intercepted the merit list because he didn't want Gary to be the commissioner. I made the point before he came on that merit list. In the same way, when Gary was selected, he was number 4. There were 3 persons on the list who were higher up than he was, and the government bypassed all 3 and picked him. So even if his name was first on the merit list and it wasn't intercepted and it went to the parliament, the Prime Minister could have just do like he didn't see that name and go to whoever else, number 2, 3, 4, 5. So this nonsense about this merit list, and they continue to push that because they have nothing else to proffer, nothing else to sell the population to say, put us in office to replace the PNM. And especially you see if this gas deal pans out as we hope it does, crap or smoke the pipe. Eric. Just no. For this here. Yes, sir. For this here. Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes. Good afternoon to you, Mr. Robin.
Greetings.
And good afternoon to all the listeners on this Sunday afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, let me take this opportunity to wish everybody Happy Republic Day, TNT, as we celebrate 47 years from 1976 to present. We have toiled, and must say thanks to the late, great Dr. Eric Eustace Williams for giving us that stance as a Republican nation. Right. My question is Gary Griffith a true Tribunian? Is Gary Griffith a realistic person? And is Gary Griffith speaking the truth? Right? Because I can recall that when they had the election for the commissioner back in 2018, not one of the opposition members voted for that man. Not one of them. Dr. Rowley gave Gary the opportunity to make a difference in the police service. Right? Look what you come and do 4 years later, 5 years later, well, no, 21, 2 years later, sorry. Right? Look what you come and do 2 years later, when your contract ended on August 18th in 2021. Right? You got that position. Right? So, in other words, that nobody shouldn't question you at all. Nobody shouldn't question you. Right? You have everything to say of the past commissioners and the present one right now. But you is the best commissioner that TNT ever had.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? But yet still, you're going in the courts and you file an injunction to block the FUL from the parliament. Why? What you have in that hide? So if you want to be my prime minister to represent me in our country, you have to set a standard. You understand? You want to block that in court. Where you have to hide? You have plenty to hide in that report or something. Who you give 10 firearms to? Who you give criminals allegedly firearms to? Hence the reason why what's going on right now in the country. That 482 number Gary has and was giving people to give information. Is it the result we're getting today? That all the information that people have given you based on certain criminal behavior and activity in the country that going on today, that all these spate of murders taking place, is it that information that people giving you in secrecy to deal with the criminal element in the country? Is that what's being used today? I would all have stuff firearms that came in the country. More wrongs than the actual population in the country. Look at Minarima last Thursday. Look up in the last week Thursday. 4 innocent children got murdered. Why? Because you have these clowns and them outside there who don't know how to use these rifles and these firearms and them. They're shooting indiscriminately. Thanks to who? The former commissioner of police. Because every nookie, cran and crevices get a firearm in this country under the table to do business. They always say crime is a business, and for it to flourish, lives have to be taken. So right now, the opposition and Gary and them they want to talk about no crime in this country. They want to go there to try to intimidate the Prime Minister and the Minister of Security. To come and say what? That they feel on crime. All of them right now, Dominic, every single one of them in opposition, as well as Gary Griffith, having joy in their heart right now that it have over 400 murders, clinch it to 500 by the end of this month or mid next month. That was them finding their heart right now. They want to talk about no crime in this country, yes. No crime talks. They want to have none. They want to go there with a bantering to say the government feed on crime, and the government this, and the government that. What plans all they had in the parliament to deal with crime in this country? Every single bill that the government brought in parliament to deal with crimes in this country, the opposition lead by a drunken leader, and I ain't ashamed to say, led by a drunken leader, shut down every single bill in parliament to deal with crime. And Gary's the same one come out and say that the same UNC that on that Kamala address getting the political fumes that they come out now to come and ladder with Kamala. And before that, they come and say, oh, the UNC who is supporting now was in bed with criminals. Gary Griffith, you is a total disgrace in this country. As a former commissioner and a politician in your party, a disgrace. And Dr. Roddy always said it. Every time Dr. Roddy said it, he made the biggest mistake putting you as the commissioner of police. Yeah, so now I'll tell you, answer these questions, what Jenny said. We don't want to have no deal with you as a so-called leader in this country. Answer the question if you will go to the court and file and tell the court to release the injunction so the population will know what really transpired in that FUL that Stanley John would have purported. Dominic, good program. I love to listening.
Thank you, sir. Hello, good afternoon.
Hey, my brother, how you been?
Greetings, sir.
Greetings to you and all the viewers and participants of the channel. And on this auspicious Republic Day, the 47th anniversary. Listen, when you analyze what this gentleman who held himself out to be, from being the youngest officer in the 1990 attempted coup, and all his so-called accomplishments at Sanders and so on and so forth. The fella paints a mean picture, but when you watch it, he's fluffing the win. And it's sad that for what was needed at the critical time, that he was the biggest mistake that the Prime Minister made. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that more and more again, you saw what came out with respect to the court ruling and so on. It buttresses McClarion call for some official secrets act. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Which will work in conjunction with the FOIA Act and the whistleblower legislation. Because you cannot have, for me, the irresponsibility of the gentleman in revealing things that he would have known as when he started national security as a security advisor, then a minister and a commissioner of police, is somebody you should have to think what happened if he get back there to the halls of power with the vindictive streak that he is on. And the disrespect that he displayed to the Prime Minister just showed him a month ago. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And the people who continue to sell his virtues and his wrapped up in whatever lies and deceit. And yes, I'm saying that these are the people, Dominic, who we don't want to hear their voices. You know, it's true that you make room for other opinions and so on, but these people are the people we want to stay away from. They have nothing good for our country. That's what I'm saying.
Yep.
I just want to say on this Republic Day, I was able to stumble across a video of the first of the inaugural address by Sir Ellis Clark in 1977 when he was sworn as our first president. And he was interviewed there by the government film unit. The comment about what republicanism meant to us is something that should be out there. If you get a chance to see it, but I know you do your research like me.
Yes.
Pull it up, and at some point you could discuss it in future thing, because what Sir Ellis Clark said and succinctly identified how he felt about our journey from a colony to independence to republicanism. And if more of our citizens will understand that, and more presidents or people who would consider themselves to be governmental or constitutional experts, they should watch what Sir Ellis had to say in that short little video. The video is probably about 21 minutes or so, but it was very enlightening. I'll share it on a future time to kind of quiet the noise that people saying about what is the relevance to the presidency to us today now. And here from the great man himself, so Ellis Innocent Emmanuel Clark, should set plenty people right on what it means for us to be a republic. Especially when we look at our size and the history of where we came from. So I wanted to drop those few gems for you, brother.
Thank you.
Trust that you look refreshed and energized to continue prosecuting our case for the government remaining as it is going into 2025. Take care, brother. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
You too.
Holiday.
Thank you, sir. Brian. Hello.
Good afternoon, Dominic.
Good day, sir.
How are you?
I am very good, and yourself?
Not too bad at all. Happy Independence to all the listeners, callers.
Republic
Day, boy. Well, I'm going back so far. Republic Day to all the independent listeners and callers. Dominic,
yes, sir.
You travel a lot. And you know, every time you go to an airport, international airport, especially in the United States, they fingerprint you and they take a shot, a picture. So therefore, you know that your fingerprints and your picture of you is in the United States. I have always held the personal view that is something we should have as a law in Trinidad and Tobago as soon as you reach the age of 15. That you should be given an ID card and your fingerprints of every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago be placed on a database. I'll tell you why I say that. The shooting last week Thursday, up to now, they have not held anybody. I'm almost certain that they have fingerprints. I'm almost certain that these characters, because they said there were 3 different types of spent shells. I've said before, not on this program, but on another program, where I realized that a 9mm bullet costs between $1 and $9 US. A 5.56, costs approximately $160 US. And a 7.62 costs upwards of $300 US. No little black boy has the financial wherewithal to purchase a guns carrying those type of assorted bullets and shoot up a place with innocent children. I just walk off into the wind and up today cannot be caught because he would have been chased relentlessly.
Yes.
He would have had certain bits of fingerprint information, if at all there were any fingerprints or whatever the case might be, and somebody would have seen something. The place is very quiet. Why do I see all of this? When you have an institution called the Financial Investigations Unit that sends out a report every year about how much money is frittered out of Trinidad and Tobago by the billions to places unknown. And when all of a sudden you have a bank indicating that they have to reduce your credit card allotment to 5,000, disbursement of 5,000 US a month. And then you want to know where the foreign exchange going. Because sadly, I too, when I listened to part of, I didn't listen to all of what Mariano Brown was talking about on Friday. I should have, and that was my feeling there. Right? However, when you have that happening, and if there are an investigative unit that they can give out a report like that, there's no small man, no little peewat have that kind of money to be moving about every single year in this country. You understand? When you have a $4.5 billion firearm and ammunition investigation going on in Trinidad and Tobago, and you have a fellow who could come and say he get inside information, he get a whistleblowing information about an investigation and could go in advance to the courts of the country. You understand? And the head, Mr. Nigel Stoddard, cannot reveal certain things. You understand? Because there'll be a lot of implications, not only for that financial unit, but for other things, maybe other investigations as well. Then you know we have a problem in this country, and a big one. You understand? I could not understand when the Honorable Prime Minister indicated that was one of the biggest mistakes, because look at what's going on in the States right now with Donald Trump. Because of classified information. You understand that he took out of a place where it's not supposed to be, a place where it's not supposed to be, down in Florida. So when you have people that have insiders who apparently cannot be touched at this point in time because of the way our laws are made up, and can give information to a particular person who has all of a sudden is on the political scene, and it could always be declared that if he is touched, it could be a form of political bias, as the UNC has claimed every time one of their own gets arrested. Then you know you have a problem. And the problem is larger than life. Because the firearms business hasn't stopped. Money's still moving, left, right, and center. Don't mind the unions and so on saying is these young entrepreneurs. A young entrepreneur moving over $60,000 TT every month. To do what? To buy what? And they say things hard in the country. When you have the finance minister indicating that over $2 billion US is moved in and out of this country every single year. That's not because you were going to buy things in Amazon alone. Money moving. It's a dummy corporation being set up abroad to move money. And how far can our investigations really and truly go to find out exactly what is going on? It is frightening. Because when I look at this, something has to be wrong here. $2 billion, that's $14 billion TT, Dominic, leaving Trinidad and Tobago to go where? That is why this particular bank, and I don't know if the others will follow, and some banks, when they have a problem, they have underlying businesses and so on. But the other banks that may be losing good, right? When you go to the bank, they can only give $200 when they want to fly. And that is why there's also an underground thing going on with respect to if you want money on US dollars underground, you have to put out $8 and $9 US. So you can imagine if the US get back into power and they decide to downgrade our money from $1 US to $12 US. How much trouble we have in this country? So what about those parents who have children abroad now studying? I have to look for money now to send across to the United States, not only to the United States, but even to Jamaica.
Thank you.
Because they want their money in US dollars. I have that confirmed by certain friends of mine that they want the money in US dollars.
Correct.
That is easy. No way, nothing like that. US dollars. You look at the trouble now. Because you have that kind of money. And when it is the effort you want to investigate your assets in the banks and so on, you can afford to. do as far as I'm being made to understand? Do we have the right to support them wholeheartedly? And what it is that we can have people in strategic positions that know that the police service may not even, the FIB may not even know who to talk to outside of the head, Mr. Nigel Stadat, in the FIU. They can't talk to nobody else because you don't know if that person is intercepting information and giving it to Gary or whoever else it might be. And if Gary could afford to come and threaten this, so he could bring down this government with information that he has. Well, now you know we're in trouble, brother. Now you know you can't touch nobody else who he may be aligned to, because Gary Griffith would be getting information from certain people. And that's why, as he indicated, when he was giving out FUL, he was giving it out to former police officers. Maybe that is the reason why. And you scratch my back, I scratch yours. I'm only saying, I don't know if it's true. But look at where we are today. That when you go to the courts now, you cannot get justice and continue your work because the man who you want to do your investigation on already has information on what you're doing. So now he's going to court now to get money from the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. I want to blame the government. You understand? And that is where we are. So that revolving door is now dead and gone. And we take there now as far as I see. I don't know when these things could have been to bear fruit. And then you have a DPP who's saying nothing there and moving nothing. Nobody moving left, right, no center. And you have one or two judges, as far as I am concerned, not helping the situation. We have a serious problem in Trinidad and Tobago. And if this continues the way it's going, you understand? You don't know who to trust. You don't know who to disseminate the information to in order to see the wheels of justice turn. But then you know we're in real trouble in this country. So we wait and we see and we look on and we will determine exactly, well, what is the best way forward for this country. But I hope that the people are listening, because it is important that 2025 comes around, that we don't get lazy and forget. But we have to keep reminding them, nobody. That is all that we can do.
That's right.
You and all the others who have called before.
Yes.
I thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Indeed. But you know, one thing, everybody who wants to for him not being no longer coming, he never mentions the fact that it was Ravi Bagobid Maharaj who challenged the legality of his acting appointment through his nemesis, Ananoga. And it was because of that challenge that he is no longer the commissioner of police today. But anyway, we ain't going to talk. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, young man.
Yes.
Good afternoon. All the callers will welcome you back. I mean, such a short time, but apparently you have been missed so much. You know, the level of information and guidance that you get from your programs touch so many people that they, you're just for a short while and you have been missed. And I join them in welcoming you back on the areas because it is so important that we get solid information. And that, as Mr. Eid said, information that is promoted with sobriety.
Yes.
So we need that. We need that. And so get dispelled. But first of all, I want to extend all greetings to our young nation. We celebrate Republic Day today. And, we're a very young nation celebrating Republic Day. And let me also take the opportunity as I do that to congratulate two persons who I know very well, who are today, Professor Clement Imbert is going to receive the highest award, the Order of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. He's a real soldier. He's Professor Clement Imbert is the chairman of the University of Trinidad and Tobago. And then, of course, my colleague, Mr. Ashton Ford, will receive the honorary medal silver for his contribution to Trinidad and Tobago. Nice. I want to congratulate both of them. Professor Imbert, I will speak to you a little later. Yes, he's going to receive the Order of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Nice. He's a true soldier, and so too is Ashton Ford. But Dominic, it will be very remiss of me. I want to join all the callers, Simpleton and all of them, and Brian and Jenny and Eric and everybody who spoke on this matter with respect to Gary Griffith. I'll tell you why, as a citizen, I don't claim to have any training in law or things like that. But as an ordinary citizen some things I believe have to respond to it. It must make sure that I satisfy myself. One is that I've read that in the judgment, and by the way, let me say that when we discuss matters pertaining to the court, we are within our rights, because the law, Supreme Council tells us that the court and the judgment is not something that we cannot speak about.
Yes.
Right? It's not a cloistered virtue, meaning you're not going to become omnipotent that we can't speak about it.
Yes.
We can. The electoral is another cloistered virtue, meaning that we can speak about it. Of course, we have to respect the decision of the church. But here, what concerns the other ordinary citizen, without any legal training, it's just a matter of a little common sense. The judge indicated in my own words that the matter that the FIU acted outside of the law. Okay? That's put it simple. That they acted outside of the law, whatever they did was not within the law. But I'm reading in the FIU response, that's what I'm saying, I as a citizen, I want some response to this. And wherever that has to go, it has to go. In the FIU response, they said, all requests made by the FIU are conducted within the parameters of the FIU under the existing conditions and mandate. The FIU will not make a request for financial information arbitrarily or without lawful cause. So they are saying, hey, Judge, listen, what we did there was within the law. But the judge is saying, no. But what I read in the judgment, I don't know if it is somewhere else in the judgment, I saw that the FIU took time to mention to me, an ordinary citizen, that in addition to suspicious transaction reports that is coming from banks and other areas of where these institutions should come from, there is something called a voluntary information report. That's what I make?
Correct, yes.
Yes. And it appears to me that the FIU is pointing us, ordinary citizens, to another vehicle which they can use to trigger investigation. That's me as an ordinary citizen. That they're saying to me that. I did not see that mentioned in the judges in the judges report.
Yes.
Voluntary information report to the FIU where they have knowledge of suspicion of money laundering. And of course, if they do not proceed on that, they will find themselves guilty of not abiding to Section 52, which talks about the Proceeds of Crime Act. So, without any legal training, that puts me in a position and tells me as a citizen, something has to be answered further than this.
Yes.
And when you read your report, you spoke about they have to reveal it to the Supreme Court. You know what the Supreme Court is in San Antonio, Dominic? The Court of Appeal. This will be High Court, and the Court of Appeal is referred to as the Supreme Court. Is it in the Court of Appeal yet, Dominic?
Nope.
Right? And that is what, if you read, you said that they will speak to the Supreme Court. Yes. The Supreme Court involves the High Court and the Court of Appeal. So as a citizen, I'm concerned about that. You know why? Because Mr. Griffith once held a high office in this country, and he's promoting himself to hold another high office. And this matter must not be left undone. As an ordinary citizen, I must get some clarity on these matters. Far too many of them. There's another report that he has blocked again. And he is coming now before us as ordinary citizens, claiming that he has certain potentials and abilities and wanted to be the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. So as ordinary citizens, I think the court needs to owe us some bit of clarity, in these matters, so that we'll understand very clearly what is the situation. I joined Jenny in saying, let us hear what is in that report. That report that emanated from Justice Stanley John. That Justice Stanley John referred to well-oiled, white collar. You hear that word? Sometimes when we talk, we say white collar criminal enterprise. It's a well-oiled, white collar criminal enterprise. Moving underneath, white collar, not by the ordinary man downstairs, the people of means involved in that. And we cannot allow that to slip by. And we cannot allow people with those kinds of allegations, and the media not paying attention. That is why we, the ordinary citizens and people like Dominic and all of us, must make our voices be heard. in treating with these matters like that. So I am hoping that this matter is not going to stop there, because the High Court judge says, look, now the law. And I'm reading the FIU response says they acted within the law. And they told me as a citizen, there's another way in which they can trigger that. They talk about a voluntary information report. That is important for me. So I'm looking forward to some sort of resolution in this matter, because we cannot allow this matter with Gary Griffith to remain unchecked and unmonitored. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Couldn't have said it better. And I would have mentioned that the judge would have left out that third remedy for making so. Hello, good afternoon.
Dominic.
Oh Lord, yes, sir.
I hear that you come like Pastor Google, right? Dominic, what's going on?
I am good, sir.
I heard Brian telling you about you should have facial recognition and fingerprinting in the airport. Remember I told you when Stuart Young was Minister of National Security, he came beating his chest and he said they were going to put back the facial recognition and fingerprint in the airport. And I told you I was so happy. I will take one out of three. He never put it back. So I don't want to hear Brian come talk about no fingerprinting now in the airport.
Oh Lord.
But I ain't call for that.
But before you go further, are you aware that they also took those out of the Miami airport as well?
The what?
Are you aware that they had those same machines in the Miami International Airport and they removed them? As a frequent flyer, I could tell you that. So perhaps there is something there.
Well, this is why when I heard Stuart Young say they were going to put it back, I was happy. And up to this day, they never put it back. Because we know the UNC got rid of all the apparatus with the manning left there. But Stuart Young come to the chest. Look up to now, they never put it back in the airport. So Brian, leave that alone. Dominic,
yes,
I go for that, Dominic, you say they didn't listen to Mariana Brown on Friday?
No, but I intend to listen to him later today.
Because I heard someone like Brian, I could be wrong,
yeah, but
Mariana Brown about the Dragon deal. So I'm surprised now that Brian didn't come and tell you what Mariana Brown said.
Well, Brian did say he didn't listen to it in its entirety, and he takes blame for that.
But he called in on the program, someone sounding like Brian.
Sounding
the
like...
The person called in on the program and spoke to Mariana Brown. Someone sounding like Brian. So I'm surprised. I could be wrong, I stand corrected.
All right.
But I waited until you listen to it.
Yes.
Because I just call you a surgeon now, you know.
How what?
You have a plaster for every song. I will leave it here.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I intend to listen to Mr. Brown. Yes, he has to say, I said, based on what was sent to me, he was less than enthusiastic about this latest development. And notwithstanding the amount of work, and again, you see, the amount of work that went into this whole process for the last 8, almost 9 months, right? With Churchill going back and forth between Trinidad and Tobago to Washington to Venezuela, Trinidad, and all of that. David Lee is asking what is the difference between 2018 and now? Well, the fact that the US would have played a more significant role in this latest installment as opposed to that one. Because remember, there were stipulations, no cash to be paid. Dr. Rowley at the press conference mentioned that there are non-disclosure agreements between Trinidad and Tobago, the US, and Venezuela. But I'm waiting to see what strategies the UNC is going to come with to get the government to disclose, as they did the last time in the parliament, when it is that Dr. Rowley was able to get back some $3 billion from a couple of the energy companies, billions that we should have gotten legitimately from taxes and royalties that the UNC told these companies, here what, forfeit, forgo it, we will forgo it, or they just come and drill and fine, and wherever you spend to drill, whatever money you spent in that enterprise, you could write it off against your tax liability. Dr. Rowley and Stuart Chung had to go all the way to the US and to the UK and wherever else to get back $3 billion. And these companies gave back this money and the understanding, this is confidential. You cannot disclose this, because remember, Trinidad and Tobago isn't the only country we do business with. We do business with other countries as well, and we are making an exception and accommodation here. And if you reveal this, it puts us in a position where these other players now could come and tell us, well, all you give Trinidad this, and all you give Trinidad that, we wanted to, and jeopardize our business. The UNC come in the parliament, pose a question for the Prime Minister to answer, to have to disclose the information, and then the Prime Minister had to get a letter from Shell or BP or one of them expressing how disappointed they were, that despite the fact we had this discussion, and we tell you, this is the situation. We're making an exception here. We understand your position. Nobody else, we're not giving this to any of the other countries we operate in. And then only to have it published, and for us now to have these countries calling us to tell us, well, since all they give Trinidad this, we wanted to. Who do that? But anyway, Eric.
Yeah, no, hello?
Yes, sir.
Here now, I just really want, what's the sense these people call in? Right? And it makes absolutely no sense. Live there, your tongue disease or what? Live there, your tongue disease? It has come to life when they come and start talking to Gubar. I remember that everybody wanted to be down as Stuart Young. Everybody. You feel the man going and invest in Toloman and take a take? Or they feel the man going to invest in Taban Bolan and Korma? Is business, economic demand trying to bring to the country. Demand flying here, there, and everywhere for the interests of the people. But you have people like Liberty and them who want to come every single time they get opportunity to come and spew a set of gubar, misinformation. I want to call in Brian's name. Brian could call and clear himself. Even though if he called Mariano Brown, whoever the banker up to this present time with Dr. Rowley and the PNM, because he didn't get the Minister of Finance position. So you have the banker right now. So all of them who didn't get position in the PNM under Dr. Rowley have an issue with the Prime Minister, because why? They didn't get what they wanted. So they rather go and badmouth the PNM and badmouth the Prime Minister. All of them, the Rasparaj, the Mariano Brown, and the others, they know themselves. You understand? Who want to claim that they so-called economists and financial advisors? You understand? Look when Minister Young and the guy from Venezuela signed up for this deal. The media in this country fought they like so much of bacchanal and couture, right? They went to Kelvin Ramnarain, but they went to everybody else other than the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Energy. Dominic, what that alone tell you? What that alone tell you? They have an agenda. They want to see this dragon deal with Venezuela and Trinidad come to a standstill, to flail, to falter. That is what UNC wants. Because you see, all of a sudden, everybody questioning the legality of the dragon deal. If Kamala was there, God forbid she was there, that was never going to happen. You know what they want to do? They want to see how much money they could thief out the treasury. And the hell was the citizen in this country? That was always a damn if you do and damn if you don't. And the hell was who don't like it. The government at the end of the day is the PNM, and they are trying to make things right. Who don't like it? Other option in 2025 is either one more country go forward in the next 5 years, or I want it to end up how Haiti, who right now trying to able to catch this up because for those who know the history of Haiti and France with the independence, right? And Dr. Roddy would have gone out in the summit and they was talking about Haiti. They trying to make things right in Haiti. You understand? And people I don't know, Dominic, it has some big people like Liberty and them, so before they come and bring some valuable contribution to the young people and to elevate the country, you come to talk as a talk on the live. You understand? Leave the man alone, leave the young, let the man do his due for the benefit of the country. We will see it now, but we will see it in years to come. And that is what people have to understand. A room didn't build in a day. It takes a period of time to get something done. And if UNC want to come and plaster over the moon, that is the onus is on the population. If all they take God out of their thoughts and put them back there, because that deal will be one deal of the past, and all them Caribbean islands would have nothing to do with Trinidad and Tobago. Dominic, good program, and what about with Facebook? Because people posted asking about Facebook.
I know that should be sorted out by Flo, the technician, had to come back again and check this thing. So hopefully for Tuesdays.
Because you know some of them on the you know some of them who are on YouTube, you know they like the Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's but the good program as usual. And I'll enjoy you all day. Be safe on the road. Don't overdo. And tonight is the biggest night of all. I want TKR to give this country a anniversary gift. We need to cut those bucks and them in Guyana tonight. Don't forget, hot game tonight. Tune in. CPL final. The very good program.
Thank you, sir. Behave on yourself. No fight. Wherever the outcome. Right? Remember, it's just a game. We have to see it. And so, yes, chicken curry or curry chicken is the question for later. My neighbors and them already pull out all the vuvuzela and all the kind of thing and the evil noise. Put up the big screen. Brian.
Dominic.
Yes, sir.
Listen to me.
Go easy.
All right, let me explain myself for Friday.
Yes.
Because I'm not going to waste time to come on those stations to lie.
Right.
On Friday, this is all I heard from Mariano Brown. Because the young lady who was normally there on a Friday was not there. I think it was the lady from morning Monday and Tuesday, 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock.
Oh, Ardeen wasn't there?
No, Ardeen wasn't there.
Okay.
And Mariano was speaking, and then he said, there are a lot of things going on, and so on. He said, but the main thing is Forex.
Mm-hmm.
And after I heard that, I had other stuff to do, and I left the show.
Mm-hmm.
I did not call in, leave it there. I have not, as a matter of fact, I have not called into to Mariano's show for quite a number of weeks. Quite a number, maybe months. So leave it there. Please, don't call me, bacchanal, or to hear my voice. Right? And you're calling up my name on the radio.
Hmm.
I haven't heard you calling to congratulate the Honorable Prime Minister. I'd like to call up his name in Guyana and Suriname. But you ain't calling up his name for the Dragon deal and the Lauren Manatee. You ain't calling up his name for that and congratulating him and congratulating Stuart Young. Yeah, you ain't calling up for that. But you want to put the Prime Minister down in Guyana and Suriname like if them supposed to be going on to do what I don't know. But something that is very, very important to Trinidad and Tobago. I thought you were leaving the country, by the way.
Yeah, you're the country.
Huh?
You're the country calling from a foreign number. That's why I didn't check. Yeah. Yes.
But let me tell you, calling to talk about the fantastic deals, the fantastic negotiations, the tricky negotiations that have to be done for the dragon deal that is going to benefit Trinidad and Tobago that has been done by the Honorable Prime Minister, the Honorable George. You congratulate them now. You know, humble yourself a little bit, like what the Princess Young man say. Humble yourself and congratulate the Honorable Prime Minister and the Honorable George Young for something that's going to benefit the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And have even some of the federations and business people congratulating them and admitting that yes, something fantastic has at last done for the country that would have benefited the country, and especially the downstreamers in Point Lisas, who will now breathe a sigh of relief knowing that just now gas will be coming to them so that they can maximize their production and bring down to same forex that Mariana was talking about apparently on Friday that will now come to Trinidad and Tobago. Talk about that now. So call up my name and all kind of, I'm not a bacchanal person, so I'm a private person. It's like to talk one little, to make little contributions for the benefit of Trinidad and Tobago. So please don't be calling up my name, brother. It wasn't me. Okay? It wasn't me. You know, so humble yourself. Have a good day, Dominic.
Thank you, sir. Right. Yes, as I said, I will try and listen to that to Mr. Brown and perhaps give a commentary on what he said. But I don't see how, with the amount of work that has been put into this initiative and the involvement of the US in particular in making certain concessions, seeming, because it would be good for the country once it gets on stream. There's some logistics to work out. It will be a couple of years yet before we start to realize the finances from it. But nevertheless, 4 years ago, we could have been in the same position and we could have been receiving the money now. So while we may say, even if it's 3 or 4 years from now, 4 years hence, the money will be coming in. A lot of us will still be around because we still need money. As you right, government.
Dominic.
Yes, sir.
Dominic.
You called to apologize to Brian?
Why I must apologize to Brian? When he called my name, I don't call back and say nothing. Dominic, I said someone like Brian. I could be wrong, I stand corrected.
Well, you were wrong.
If it wasn't Brian, that's so it be.
All right.
Right? But I'm waiting until you listen to Mariana Brown, and then we go talk.
All right.
Dominic, in the early, didn't I tell you what happened to the Manatee Field? Why they couldn't deal with the Manatee Field? But Dr. Rowley, I know he wants dragon deal. When we have shares in the Manatee Field. No, you want to go there. You want to run now dragon deal. But we'll talk more about that, Dominic.
All right.
I will leave it there.
All right. So clearly, Livide did not listen to me at the start when I also read where NGC would have, over the last couple of days, signed an agreement with Shell as well for Manatee Field. I read that as well. So it wasn't just Dragon. Manatee Field is also in play as well. And now that we've had this development, as you know, part of the reason why Manatee Field was not pursued, again, would have been the sanctions with respect to the US sanctions on Venezuela. And the government wanted to do the Manatee Field, the Laura and Manatee Field as a joint enterprise. But because of the sanctions, they couldn't pursue that agreement anymore. The government said, we will just focus on our side of Manatee, and whenever the US decide to give us a blind, we will revisit that. Now that the circumstances have changed, it seems that may be in play as well. You weren't listening to me, leaving it. Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, I was Dominic. I thought when he had called first, he forget to mention the Prime Minister name.
Yes.
You understand? That man don't feel good unless he mentioned Keith Rowley naming him out. I have a question before you leave it there. Dominic, how old Livide is? Livide had to be probably at any late 60s or mid 70s or somewhere around there. If he was my father, I put him in a little home. I be real with you. There, nobody is saying they can make contribution. But at the end of the day, he just makes some statements that warrant people anger after the call back. You understand? You want to come and talk about this deal that with Venezuela and Trinidad and oh gosh, if you don't know economics and energy and the energy industry, oh gosh, it have courses for that. You understand? Go and take a little course in what you, even if you reach the age of pension age, you can still go and do a little course, and so you can know how these things operate. That coming on the live and calling and talking frivolous and foolishness. And forever calling the Prime Minister's name. The Prime Minister don't like man. The Prime Minister have a wife of how much years? He have grandchildren and he have 2 daughters and two in-laws. Right? He don't like man. So leave the blinking Prime Minister alone. The man don't like you. Well, like there's already relatives in your mind with your mind to leave it there. You can't make a contribution unless you call the Prime Minister name. The man don't like man. Take some time and go and walk or something. If you have a wife, go and let her with your wife or something, man. Oh, Jesus ages, Dominic lockdown.
Thank you, sir. Oh, Lord. Even there, causing problems. Mr. Chance.
Yeah, I think this matter, I feel comfortable to call in following what Brian said.
Yes.
You see, some people are behaving in this country as though the Dr. Rowley and Mr. Theotiong was only seeking the interests of Trinidad and Tobago. I know, I listen to Mr. Marilla Brown, and I don't expect anything from Mr. Marilla Brown. Mr. Marilla goes to just spin all over the place. So all the chambers refer to that as something very special. But I'm going to read it to the record for your listeners to hear. Not only Trinidadians are talking about it, not only the chambers, all the chambers in this country speaking about it. I want you to hear what the Vice President of Venezuela said. So you have to understand this mutual benefit. Hear what the Vice President of Venezuela is Delcy Rodriguez. Remember how they tried to malign her name?
Yes.
And she came to Trinidad?
Yes.
Well, let me tell you what she said in this. Quote, for Venezuela, it represents an historic opportunity, to develop the gas industry for the benefit of the people of the Republic of Venezuela, but also for the economic development of the people, but also it represents the good neighborly, brotherly relationship that has been established and woven between 2 countries. You have to understand that. And when you understand that, you'll understand the impact that is going to have on the economy of both countries. And I thought I would share that with your listeners. Venezuela is looking forward to it, to improve the economic condition of their people, because they have the gas. Trinidad and Tobago has the human and physical infrastructure, and when they come together, they contribute to the development of both countries. Mutual, those who don't understand that word, please. I just thought I would put on the record what the Vice President of Venezuela said. So it's not Dr. Rowley and Mr. Theodore poaching and trying to boast. The Venezuelans are boasting too, but they want a better quality of life for their people.
Indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Charles. All Venezuelans, the Venezuelans, that I'm sure that situation would have been factored into how we proceed, and with the US announcing some sort of temporary accommodation for Venezuelans who would have been in their country up until July 31st. They would be allowed to remain and work in the US for at least 18 months with the possibility of a further extension thereafter, right? So the US also has a vested interest in looking after the well-being of Venezuelan migrants. So I'm sure that would have been factored into whatever concessions they may have given with respect to the dragon gas issue. So all those who want to pour cold water on it, and because remember at the end of the day, everybody want to write off Keith Rowley as a failure, and he was prime minister, and you know what you're doing, but Dr. You just take it in stride, and then these things come and happen, and yeah, it's like, well, he was able to close off a deal that Mr. Manning's administration couldn't do, and Kamala Prasad-Bises's administration couldn't do. He has been able to do it, and again, through diplomacy, and he didn't do it by meeting with anybody in a hotel room wearing slippers, boxers, and a white Peter vest, right? He was properly attired, and he would have met these individuals in formal settings, made his position known with respect to Trinidad and Tobago, and here we are today. So give the man his kudos now, all right? Folks, let me thank you all for joining me today. It was a pleasure. All 512 of you who are on. Again, apologies for the Facebook. Hopefully that matter will be sorted out between Tuesday and Wednesday, so that for Thursday morning's live, we should be back up and running on Facebook. John says, could Dr. Rowley and the PNM do anything right for leave it there? Probably not. The US only have interest in their own benefits. They are having gas problems too. Yes, Jasmine Spirit says, Jasmine Spirit, yes. Jennifer says, I set a jellyfish. Yeah, right. Let me see who else we have here. Yeah. Emara says, you really do put out a lot into your programs. You work hard with a lot of commitment. You will get your blessings from God. Thank you so much, Emara. Yeah, so folks, enjoy the rest of your... so Wayne Gibson says, yes, David Lee asked what investment all the traveling bringing to the country. You see Dr. Rowley, Dr. Lee, gas, yeah, I call you doctor. Yes, gas deal, exactly. What did their leader ever do with all the money that she spent, with all the travels? Yeah? Leasing jumbo jet and so on, and flying all over the world, carrying her sister playing nurse. Cost us, the taxpayers, hundreds of thousands of dollars, so that her sister could joyride all over the world to places that some of the people who support will never go to. Yeah? But that's the nonsense we support. Let me take this last one. Jenny. Hello?
Yeah, Dominic?
Yeah, Jen.
I have to say this, you're not on a radio station. You're not on Facebook. You're just on YouTube. Yes. And you're clocking over 500. What again the one by?
I do.
Because you have it facts. They want nothing with you. They want nothing with Miss Baby, Miss Taruka, John Gill, John Benoit, Darren Marcel, Sean, Felix, and the Titans. They want nothing on Pastor Google. You know, even on radio and watch it. Yes. They just take that as kankalanka in the tail. And this evening, we gain Guyana gas. They go past gas. They say they have oil and we have oil. Yeah. But that's all right. We have gas, and when they get lit from camp, they go past the gas, they go here, then there's a love at the end of the day, because they know it's sports, you know, we just do it and go on.
Indeed. Thank you, Jerry. Yeah, folks, so enjoy the rest of your day. And tomorrow, of course, it's a long weekend. Tuesday, we will record Tuesday, God's willing. I feel by then I would have listened to Mr. Brown, and perhaps I could touch on what he would have said. We might have to revisit the whole US issue, because that is their distraction for now, right? That's what they want to talk about. Again, just to pour cold water on these developments in the gas sector. But kudos to the government for what they're doing. We know Stuart Young is working extremely hard, aside from his work as Minister of Energy, in terms of the work that he's doing to promote the party and to build that cohesion within the party. The man, you really do any human service. So congratulations to you, Mr. Young, for all that you do, and know that it is appreciated. So we will chat on Tuesday morning. Tuesday. Okay, yeah, Tuesday morning, folks. So enjoy the rest of it. I don't know who will be watching the awards later, who will be watching the cricket. Whichever you choose, have a good one.